I know in my own life, the times that I've made major changes, it was like it became more painful not to change than to change. That was when I made big changes.
It's this whole ridiculous narrative of it's an unsafe world. There's not enough for you. It's scary. Everyone's out to get you, and clearly the old civilization was completely the opposite to that. It was all about empowerment, like literally.
Cosmic resonance, I think they called that one, or
cosmic resonance. That's a better name.
Real science, you can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding. Put that into the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. It's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
The movies are the truth and the news is the lies. They've completely flipped it.
When you look at everything with new eyes and you come across information like she was born into a very wealthy family with elite connections, it means something very different now to me than it would have even a few years ago. Just getting their independence and end up in civil wars for 20, 30 years happens a lot. And it's our free will that they've really also messed with, because we've been lied to and we react based on lies.
Because we keep choosing to pick up the gun and use it on ourselves instead of building and uniting and accepting that we are one people, one spirit, one harmony on one plane that together, united, can achieve anything we dream of.
So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because to change is too difficult?
And then give them pieces of information that they will then pursue themselves and look into, and then they'll wake themselves up.
I was going to mention it's the whole red pill, blue pill of the Matrix. I mean, that of the movie. And you can consider that movie as a documentary because they're telling us something about what's happening here. So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because to change is too difficult? Wake up.
All right. Hello and welcome to Autodidactic Live, the science of sound. We have Ominous, the beatbox, a human beatboxer with us. We've got Daniel Foster and Mike from Faraday Research. And of course, BurnEye, Third Eye, Mind's Eye, the science guy without the bow tie up in the corner there. So welcome. Who have we got here? We've got people watching, Anonymity, Beck, Spain Bear, Joaquin, Odinga, B Capel, Spirit Levels, Tommy Rogers. Hello, everyone. Alrighty, and to get started, I'm going to hand it over to the human beatbox himself, and we're going to get a bit of ominous beatboxing. So,
can you hear me? Hopefully you can hear me.
We can.
Operation of sound. Well, let's just check out. Let's just check. Hang on, can you hear me, people? Messing with the frequencies is something I like to do. Get back, man. Let's change it. Just to play that record just properly, Ken. Oh, what's good is that's good. See, when you mess with the frequencies, you have a whole bunch of different definitions of sounds. Just like, well, it's good news, everyone. We'll just see what the professor has to think. You're sounding all right so far. I hope I'm not bothering anyone. Echo. Hang on. Let's just breathe. Hang on, I'll wrap up. All right, back to you. You know, I'm just doing that thing, resonation, sound. It's always one of those profound things that Ominous loves to carry out in and between segments of most intellectual conversations. And yes, they slice, they dice, they cut julienne fries. But wait, there's always more. You stupid. Hey, what's that?
We want it no other way.
I think Alice Cooper just ate a chicken. Something happened.
That was amazing, Ken. Thank you, Ominous brother.
I hope it was okay. It was a freestyle. It was just what was on the dome. I hope it was okay.
It was very good. It was very good.
Training up.
Here we go.
The general consensus was fire.
He's
was good.
Get over here.
And it's a very good intro to the topic because, of course, you know, the human beatbox, right? We're all human sound vessels, really, aren't we? We're frequency condensed. and frequency is sound. And so everything is frequency as well, really, which is the big scam, right? This is what they try and tell us, all the seance and everything, and all their physics, and they're explaining all this physical universe, but it's not really what we experience, is it? It's more just what we see on TV.
And what resonates with the human soul.
Indeed.
When you feel the sound, you don't just hear it, you feel it. And resonance and sound, it's a huge part of us figuring out the Tartarian and this Antiquitech and the science of the ancients and the past civilizations. So I think that's pretty good for us in this episode. We'll dive into the Solfeggios a bit, and then maybe look at Starforts by the end of it.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, as it says in the beginning, was the word, right? The sound, the vibration, the frequency, mixed with intent, maybe.
Right? And the sound with intent is manifestation and creation.
Well, if it's everywhere, and you look at it in the Bible, look at Jericho and the walls and the sounds and turn down that power, and how there's science that connects that possibility of how powerful sound really is through vibrations. How destructive it can be, especially decibel levels.
Well, I mean, right, the brown note. I don't know if everyone's heard of the brown.
That's supposedly a thing. I've been a retired military person emailed me some disclosures, and we started talking, and he specifically told me a story where they accidentally played the brown note through their coils, and everyone that was within that radius shat themselves in the garage. And it supposedly actually exists.
Yep. And there's we've all heard the stories of people getting thoughts implanted into their minds through frequency. And I mean, it's just everywhere, right? And I mean, singers can shatter glasses with frequency. Spells can, spells like frequency words can hypnotize people.
Make them anxious. Give them superior, like it could be a weapon. It could be weaponized in making people feel vulnerable, which is really bad because that's very possible.
Indeed, and they do it in movies. It's documented, like Marilyn Manson, for instance. He does the soundtracks to influence the people within the movies, as opposed to him just making music these days. Mike, before you fall, sorry, I know it's late, Faraday. You maybe want to talk about some of your experiments with sound and the signal generator and how you're putting it into the water in your water machine.
Yeah, well, I've been at it now for the last 2 years now with the water machine. A friend introduced me to the machine, and I built one myself. So I started getting into the harmonics of how harmonics affect water. And we're finding out more and more evidence is coming out that, harmonics can actually be embedded in water, reprogram the water. Magnetics is also a big part of it as well. So I've got piezo transducers attached to my tank, and I'm using sound waves to pump in 432 hertz into the water and restructure the water. So getting some very interesting effects. Improving your health, your well-being. A few times I was drinking the water, and I went to a regular water faucet to wash my hands, and I got zapped. I got electric shock. So obviously the water that I'm making is getting charged. So yeah, it's just something I've been working on the last, like a side project, and I'm finding out some interesting things. I'm starting to introduce
the Schumann resonance in.
Yeah, 432 hertz, and I have one giant quartz crystal inside the tank. So I've also got the piezos resonating against quartz crystal to amplify that signal even more. So yeah, it's a work in progress. I'm doing a lot of experiments with that. I did one experiment with the piezo on the table, and I put it was about a 1-inch piece of quartz crystal. It had a bit of carbon in it, and they had the facets on the end. I believe 4 facets. I sticked it on top of the piezo, put my finger on top, turned it up to 432 hertz, and I had this, it felt like electricity going from my finger all the way up to my elbow. I start resonating all the way up to my elbow, almost instantaneously.
What? What was that? When you just touched it?
Yeah, I just touched the top facet, the other side of the facets touching the top of the piezo. So I turn the frequency on. The piezo's vibrating the crystal starts resonating, and that signal hits the nerve in my finger and goes all the way up my elbow.
Fuck.
Traveled.
Can you show me how to make one of them? I want to send it up my arm. I'm still having issues with my arm. Stuff.
Yeah, that's going to be one of our next future projects, is rebuilding them so we can all have access.
Yeah, I'm
to
just thinking if I can send shockwaves up my hand, it'll get it working faster.
Well, it probably improve your circulation if you've got circulation problems.
It's the circulation that they're working on now, because that's the main thing. But I used to get the opposite when I first did it. I was getting shots going from my shoulder down to my fingertips, just going boom, and I'm like,
yeah, painful, yeah. This would actually probably cure that.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. So yeah, send me anything you've got on how to build it. Of course,
very easy. Just buy the piece.
We're going to do a video with the entire list, like parts list, and then an actual build day where Mike instructs me, and we can do it with you as well, Cambell. We'll get the parts list together, and then we'll make an episode in a day of it.
Yeah. I was going to say, if you send me the list first, and I can get something going, I can report back on what's happening.
Yeah. It was just a simple experiment. I just put the piezo on the table, attached it to my signal generator, and then just manually with my finger hold that crystal on top of it, and then just start playing with the frequencies. And for some reason, 432 was significant.
Yeah.
It was an instantaneous reaction.
Obviously, yeah.
So I went right up. I went right up into the kilohertz, all the way down. But the second I hit,
that sounds almost like a rife machine, but you're actually.
It is, yeah.
Like you're going through a crystal and conducting it onto like the nerves rather than putting electrodes on your skin.
Yeah, exactly.
All
amplifying the piezo effect. So, because there is a crystal inside the piezo transducer, that's how it vibrates. You're using that crystal, but I'm amplifying even more with the 1-inch piece that I had. So yeah, I've been dabbling with that lately because I have a friend that lives not too far from me. I'm actually building a water machine for him now, and he's giving me all these crystals and everything to play with, and he goes, "Yeah, try it out." So I told him what happened with that experiment that I did, and he's like, "Wow, really?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, it traveled right up my arm."
Cool.
I'm glad you're discussing this because I no longer feel as crazy, because I experienced similar sort of shocks and electrical waves and whatnot through my arms and body some of the times when touching my monoatomics or the water after it was unplugged. No live current going in whatsoever, but just you get this massive shock or an actual little bolt as soon as you touch something metal. It's intense.
That's cool. Marie Keithley, if you've got a question, type it in the chat. Daniel, how are you doing now? Haven't heard from you, sitting there quietly.
Rough, but I'm okay. I was going to have a run in the other day. The man tried to run me over twice, me and my dog.
Oh, twice?
Yeah, and it was during busy traffic too.
Crap, that's.
And then last night while you were on the private chat with us, We were live with you when that same guy was parked outside your house, and you confronted him and chased him off. We pray for Daniel, and we're glad that you are safe, Mr. Foster.
Yeah.
I spoke with a friend just to make sure, like, if I am gone, someone will take care of my dog. And he was. At first, I was maybe it was a random road rage, but then he was parked right out front last night. So it's nothing random.
Yeah, I've been run off the road twice last year, so I feel you.
Yeah. It might be about the coils, that that I'm working with Jeremy on it. I made some coils about 20 years ago, and they were able to float. And I think that's probably the reason.
Yeah, I do a lot of work with coils myself with my pulse generators. I'm working on a special Adams motor generator right now. And right now my COP is hitting about 40. So.
To interrupt quickly, do you want to check the back? Waiting to get in too.
I've lost my mouse. What's happened?
Possibly. If Jeremiah joins the show, he could show you the coils.
Like that. Okay.
How they're made.
HT. All right. Who's HT?
Hominid, I believe. Hypothesis.
Yo, hiya.
Here's a question for you, Mike. I was running my water in the motorhome. My grandson was playing with magnet balls, a long string of them, and when I turned the water on, they blew apart. I guess they became non-magnetic. I was running water in the
blew apart.
Does that mean that
Did he have some?
What does it say here? It was
in a motorhome?
They literally popped and shot all over. Yeah, in a motorhome. Something to do with turning the water on, and it stopped the magnets being magnetic or repelled each other, maybe, it sounds like.
The only thing I could see doing something like that, somehow a power source was actually hitting the water. So when the water came on.
Yeah,
that's a weird scenario. So it happened in a motorhome.
Could it be something to do with the Faraday cage effect? I mean, would that do anything? It wouldn't really.
No, it has. See, the only thing I know that can really affect magnetism is actually heat. If you heat up a magnet, it loses its magnetism.
Oh, okay.
And inversely, if you cool it off, it gets exponentially stronger too. That's why much of these
the superconductivity
motors and systems, they get really cool and cold.
Is that
that's direct evidence? It's direct evidence too that this energy for the free electricity, it's not coming from nowhere. It's an endothermic reaction where it's sucking up radiant energy from the environment around it, and then through the magnetism, turning it into electrical power.
Well, flowing water is magnetic.
Yeah, water is magnetic, yes.
Yeah, flowing water
is magnetic. Yeah, if it's super cooled, then you get superconductivity, right? And that's why you can get magnets to float over a table that has like a liquid nitrogen or a cold surface. You
get alkaline water. Alkaline water.
Not really. It has to do with the conductivity of the actual magnet, and that's enhanced when the temperatures drop.
Yeah.
So when they get super hot, they lose their strength.
Yeah, right. She said she used battery and solar, so it sounds like there must have been some kind of charge build up.
Could have
into the water somehow, and when she's turned it on, it's discharged some kind of a charge, right? It's discharged and hit.
Yeah, if it dead shorted, like say the water line got dead shorted, yeah, it could do a disruption in the magnetic fields. I could see that happening. Kind of like an EMP, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I'm envisaging. Just like a little mini one that sort of, and because she was inside like a metal
A
cage,
closed area.
yeah, it could, sort of make it more effective.
And more of a capacitance to it as well.
Yeah, it would have capacitance in a closed area.
I run water through a magnet hose. So there you go. So it sounds like there might be, some kind of.
Well, that's what I do with my water. I run,
leak into water.
See, in my water machine, what I do is I spin the water in a vortex. So I'm doing a hyper implosion of the water. And then from there, it goes through the magnetic field. So I set up 5 really powerful neodymium magnets, north poles facing in, and the water passes through that. And what it does is it neutralizes any transient electromagnetic fields that are in the water. After that is done, then I take the Rife machine and I reprogram the water. So that's how my machine works.
All right, yeah, cool. All right, she says thanks. It sounds like she might be. I don't know, Marie. Are you storing the water with magnets around them? That sounds like that might be causing this, where the water
Sure. Yep.
It needs to flow through the magnets, all with the same pole facing in, and that'll clear any other frequencies and stuff.
Yeah, it neutralizes it.
Yeah. All right, there you go. Hope that helped. We just solved a problem. All right. Anyone else? We're here on Ask the Scientists. No, not the
So I've
scientists.
got
Self-educated
acoustic levitator set up here. So levitating something with sound currently, just a little bit of styrofoam, but give me a couple seconds. I'm going to grab some of my monoatomic powders and see if we can levitate it. And if it does,
is this the one we're
special.
looking at? Is that this one, Burn?
Yes, sir. You got it.
Yep.
So that's 2 pieces of styrofoam between acoustic.
Oh, I see. I'm looking
right
at public.
now.
Yeah, okay. In between. Yep, gotcha.
Yeah. Yeah, it's too bad. Can you zoom in on it there, Bernie?
Acoustic phasing, right?
Yeah.
Wow, man. Cool.
See, sound has a lot of properties.
With sound right now.
Yeah, and there's a guy who was a New Zealand guy who was boiling water with sound back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Keely.
I could see that
Keely
happening.
was his name, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
Keely
John
was
Keely.
doing
Keely was his name. Oh.
it.
Do you want to put on a couple of
let me just
pics of videos maybe, or that ominous a little bit more quickly while I grab another sample?
Well, I'll just let me I'll share that thing that you just shared.
Yeah, let's get more into this levitation. This is really neat. Let's talk more about this. What makes it float? What makes that it just hops around?
You know what? I really believe the ancients knew all about this. This is a lost technology.
Yeah.
And we're just starting to investigate, the effects of sound. It's a lot. It's totally a lost science.
It is, and that's a perfect intro. Let me just have a quick look at this. This is sound weapons. Ultrasound is low frequency audio beneath the human range of hearing. Infrasound constantly surrounds us, generated naturally, wind waves, earthquakes, and by man, building activity, rah, 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 rah. At higher infrasound of around 7 hertz can directly affect the human central nervous system, causing disorientation, anxiety, panic, bowel spasms, that's the brown note, nausea, or as they're calling it now, the Amber Heard note, nausea, vomiting, and eventually unconsciousness. Supposedly 7 to 8 hertz,
it can kill you.
Being the same.
Sound can kill you.
It can literally kill you.
Definitely can.
Yeah, for real.
I think it's around from what I remember, it's about 163 dB. Your body starts shutting down.
Must have shut down. Yeah. Well, 7 hertz supposedly the most dangerous frequency, corresponding to the median alpha rhythm frequencies of the brain. Okay, so that disturbs the brain. 1 to 10, intellectual activity is inhibited. 43 to 73, lack of virtual acuity. IQ scores fail. Up to 70% of normal. Distortion of spatial orientation. 50 to 100, intolerable sensations in the chest and thoracic region can be produced, even if the ears are protected. Other psychological changes that can occur include chest or vibration and some respiratory rhythm changes. So that's not good. And so obviously if you go above that, it's changing the rhythms of things like your body rhythm, right? Your heart and all your organs and all that kind of stuff. So
it goes back to
places where it's negative. Like then that one of those rooms where it's negative decibels, and then you can hear your organs and your blood flowing through you. And I mean that does, and you can see hallucinations and all sorts of weird things happen that people can't be in there longer than 45 minutes in these rooms.
You know, I think it goes back to the biblical times. You know, the walls of Jericho.
Yeah,
and they were using sound as a weapon back in those days. Right?
Even like the apocalypse, you know, they talk about sounding the horns or the trumpets, the angels and the trumpets.
Yep.
Open up the.
There were sonic weapons.
Trumpets. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and look what we see. I mean, because Sodom and Gomorrah, they're still there. It's kind of. You should see them. They look like they've been zapped. Or I don't know, done something to them.
A shockwave weapon.
Yeah, and there's even pictures of sound weapons. So this is like you know, someone said, and speakers. Someone says AC/DC, and we you know what happened a few months ago at a concert, right? So you know all these concerts and the stuff they're pumping out. It's literally they're pumping out frequencies that are affecting us. And I mean we know this, right? Some people coming out of concerts are much different to what they were going into the concert, you know.
I think you know the ancients had a very good grasp on what this stuff was, and it was lost. But I think it was hidden from the general public's knowledge, and the elite rich are using this sound frequency against the populace right now, and we don't even know it. You know what the perfect weapon is, the weapon you can't see.
Yeah,
exactly. Ed Lee Scallon was you know apparently moving blocks, and same thing was holding little cones or trumpets, but levitating. And the theory is that he was repelling, basically changing the magnetic or the frequency so that the rocks were repelling the ground. And so they were losing mass. They were losing their mass. 10 tons. 10 tons, some of those stones. And it was done by one guy, and he stood about 5'5". He was tiny. He was tiny.
He was a small guy. It wasn't a big guy.
No, he was tiny. That's a good one. Like ears ringing too. That, you know, when you go to a big concert, right? Your ears, you know, just keep ringing for days, don't they?
Oh yeah, 100 dB. You're gonna feel it.
Indeed. All right, what are you doing, Bernie? Are we still watching this levitating? So when they're levitating, or when Bernie is levitating this, you know, these balls, does that mean we have a frequency coming down and a frequency going up, and they're sitting in the
they're in a pressure wave
joining, like basically again in the Vesica Pisces kind of region of two fields that are interacting?
Yeah, they're resonating together in resonance, and it's creating this pressure field and suspending the object, right? So I'm not too.
Is it magnetic? Is that or is it sound? It's sound.
No, it's pure sound and pressure. See, sound and pressure go together, right?
Yeah, well, we've all seen speakers, right? Boom, boom.
Right, exactly. It hits you in the chest. You can feel it. It's a shock wave. So the movement of air and the sound together, they work together. It's like one entity, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not really my expertise, but
yeah,
that's
I'm just wondering why they're not together, why they're in different.
What I've read about it, it's they're different phased sounds. It's the actual phasing that makes it levitate.
So is that where so you have you need two sound frequencies, and it's where they interact that we.
Well, I've seen some of these devices that have small, like 8 transducers, and all of them are phased.
Phased.
Those are the ones I've read about.
Frequencies.
I'm not sure if that's the same.
Yeah, those transducers are very interesting. I got quite a few of them, and I've been experimenting with them, and the effects are quite dramatic for such a tiny little device.
Isn't it? And here's Kimberly says, water. We're 70% water, we're at least, right? So, and the words we say are spells. So we can bless our water and
sound waves resonate in water.
Yeah, like Dr. Emoto's work. So,
and sound can change magnetic direction.
It can change.
Yeah. So, you know a decent amount about sound and magnetism. Are sound waves magnetic waves, or are they a different type of wave altogether?
They are magnetic related, yes. You could similar to like moving water. You can actually change flip magnetic poles using sound.
Really?
Okay.
So you can flip a wow.
And my coils consist of canceling monopole magnets, monopole magnets.
You just gave me an idea.
Oh.
Another idea popped in my head.
Floating in the air.
So did you put some gold in it or bismuth in that? What are you doing there, Bernie?
So you've made this, Bernie. So do you know what?
Sorry, had to unmute there.
This is
so I
sound.
just put in a little copper oxide.
Yeah.
Yes, acoustic levitation. So sound waves. I think it's equal sound waves going in at each other together that cancel the field of the forces. I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to have to ask Michael. He's the genius and specialist that both donated this to me and understands them fully, and or Jeremiah, if JP joins, he was able to explain it better. But I put in some copper oxide. One particle went straight up and trapped underneath the top piece of styrofoam, and then all of the rest have just fallen and not seemed to be affected by it since. I'm going to try a particle of some bismuth copper oxide next and see if it reacts differently.
So do you know, and Hibby's just mentioned it again, are we talking interacting fields here, Bernie? Do you know?
I would say the fields would be colliding.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm looking at. I'm thinking is two fields, and when they interact, we get the vesica Pisces, and that's the inertia field, if you want to call it that, where it can sit and levitate.
Yeah.
Is that right?
So from my interpretation, I believe it's two equal fields colliding, canceling each other out, and then creating what some call the oh my god, now I can think of the word. Scalar waves, or the scalar field, is essentially counter space wave, or a third, fourth dimensional field force, field wave interactions and forces. Also, Cam, do you want to check? I think it made the sound where someone else might be waiting backstage again.
No, everyone's in. You just got your second camera waiting out. We have a full house.
Never mind. That would be ominous noises that I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry. I didn't know they were that loud.
Excuse me.
Oh, you better get that checked
Dan,
out.
while we have you on, Mr. Forster, do you want to tell us a little bit more about it? It's a double bifilar coil system that you're correct.
Yes,
Creating
yes.
equal.
It's a series of 5 counterwound 10 coils altogether, and they're counterwound, and they're all it looks like it's a sphere when it's all put together. There's 2 outer hemisphere coils, and then on the inside are DC coils, 2 flat pancakes, and then 2 counterwound column coils that are on top of each of the pancake coils. And then the negative wires are stripped naked for the inner AC hemisphere, and the column coils, all the negative wires are naked as well.
When you make your coils, how do you determine the size of your coils? By mass or by the length of the wire?
Yeah, the length of the wire. Thank you for asking. The hemisphere coils, I usually wrap around like a ball to shape them and wrap them. And the pancakes are half the length of the hemisphere coils.
Okay, so you're going half wavelength. Yeah.
Yeah. In the column, and then the counterwound column coils are a quarter.
Sorry. Have we got Rex? Is that Rex in the chat?
Is that Rex?
Saying, hey, Bernie.
Sorry, saying, hey.
Sorry to interrupt you there, Daniel. Bern, are you listening to me or are you ignoring me? I'm sending frequencies towards you, Bernie. React to them. Hello?
I think he's got some lag.
Bernie. Rex, is that you? Is that you in the chat? Bernie, you're on mute. You're on mute.
Any lip readers in the house?
Yes. I thought that was him.
Hey. Are you on there?
Guys, I gotta head out here. It's after 1 o'clock. I'm kind of fading here.
Well, Mike's have a good night, but Mike will be back and we'll get this this little machine. What is it that we're going to make? It's just a little circuit.
Well, you just buy the circuit on Amazon. It's called a piezo transducer. They look like little wafers with 2 wires coming off. Very, very tiny little. You can get them about 1 inch diameter, ½ inch. It really doesn't matter. They do the same thing. You can actually Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just mentioning.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. We can, Bernie. How inappropriate timing are for you. Sorry. Who was talking? Daniel, talk. Anyone? No? Now everyone's muted.
Okay. Mike, thanks. It was so late starting. Now that you guys can hear me properly, Rex was supposed to join us today, and we were going to go live with him as well. And that's kind of why I've also been struggling with the topics, but we've done pretty good.
Did you see that?
It was tough.
Did you see that I think he's in the chat. We got a leak project saying, "Hey, Bernie." That's what we were trying to say when you were like so rudely ignoring us.
My audio stopped working for some reason.
I
Sorry
can't
about
find
that.
it now, but he hasn't come in the back room anyway. But if you're in the chat, Rex, let us know. Cool. All right. Well, we'll let you go, Mike, because you're falling asleep.
Okay.
And we'll be back with Mike to build circuits and stuff in the future. So dream well, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Yeah.
I must leave as well. Thank you all for having me on the show for a little bit, and you guys. I'll make sure you keep this discussion going live.
Thank you for joining us. But I do think Ominous, His Highness. Oh no, that's not you. That's someone who's talking. Ominous, the beatbox. I think you need to do a little outro for us before you go.
All right, I will. Just a little one before we get back on topic with this wonderful levitation.
See you guys.
Levitation with the sound. That's a sound scratch.
Oh, and there you go. Ominous is out. All right. Very nicely done. All right. So it's back with myself, Bernie. We have Daniel and is HT there. We've got someone in here, but I haven't heard anything from them. Hello, HT. I'm not even sure who.
Hi there.
Oh, there we go. We've got someone there.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello. All right. Yeah, so I'll let you guys talk for a few minutes while I'm going to have to head off here, and then I will be back in part 2 and discuss the arpeggios, and I will explain the acoustic levitator a little bit more.
All right. Well, there we go. All right. So, Daniel or HT, does anyone feel like taking the floor and enlightening us?
I'll chat for a bit if you like.
Yeah, go for it.
All right. Well, I've got a bit of a background in sound engineering, and I've built sound systems, and I play bass, so I quite enjoy bass frequencies and messing around with them. So I got I thought I had a bit of experience with sound. Then someone told me something rather interesting, or at least I watched something rather interesting recently, which was about some pressure levels.
Crackling up a bit there. Are you on a phone or?
Hello?
Yeah,
on a phone.
Are you plugged in?
Yeah, I can hear.
It might just be your headphone. It's a bit crackly, but that's all right. Keep going.
All right, hang on a minute. I'll switch it to the mic. Hello?
Yep.
Is that any better?
It's a little bit better.
Right. Well,
go on. Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, it's probably not great, but
yeah, it's all right. It's got a bit of.
So I thought I had.
Yep. I'll be quiet.
Sorry, there's a bit of a delay. So I thought I'd heard everything there was to hear about sound pressure levels, and then someone told me something quite interesting, which is that the loudest animal on Earth is the sperm whale, and the sound pressure levels produced by the sperm whale are something like 230 decibels, which, to put that in perspective, the space shuttle is about 140 decibels. So this animal that lives on our planet and people die with it, it can actually kill people with sound naturally, as just just itself, which I thought was pretty wild because I'd never heard that before. And there's actually video of people diving with sperm whales, and it's dangerous apparently.
It's bizarre. I would have thought that because it was traveling through a thicker medium, it wouldn't have needed to be so loud.
Oh, actually,
yeah, it's bizarre, but it's absolutely true. And it apparently has a heating effect on the human body, which can be actually quite uncomfortable. And in the water, of course, because the water conducts the sound so well, it's even louder. So it's a risk. It's like significant risk, and they can quite easily. They don't tend to, which is amazing, but they can quite easily kill human beings with sound. So
Wow.
I'd never heard that before, which I thought was quite interesting.
Isn't it? Yeah, I mean, I wonder if that's used as defense for them in any way. Not that they would need much defense; they're pretty fairly big.
Well, they also have enormous brains, comparatively to their body, even. And people who dive with them say that they use the sound almost as sort of X-ray, like you can feel it going right through you.
Like, oh, it's like,
Um,
yeah, like
and they make
echolocation.
these, yeah, but even more. There's something more to it. There's some sort of hidden component
But
there
it's
where they
X-ray.
can use the sound to, well, physiologically affect the human being, and produce different emotional effects that you just wouldn't
Yeah,
understand unless you dive them.
like we just were seeing on the effects of sound weapons, and Wesley said that they use it to disorient their prey, like giant squids. So I mean, that would, yeah, it makes sense, wouldn't it?
Right. Well, I mean, if you combine that with an enormous brain and an ability to actually communicate, who knows? I mean, they could, I've heard a lot of odd reports since then when I've talked to people who've died of them about the kinds of physiological and psychological and emotional effects that has on people died with them. And, it's a sentient being, so there's some interaction between, I mean, if the whale wasn't aware of the divers, they'd be dead. So,
Yeah, yeah,
it's obviously aware that, and they like human beings, apparently. They like to sort of try and communicate with us.
yeah.
It's just the whole thing is fascinating.
Yeah, and then, obviously linked to dolphins as well, and everyone. I mean,
Yeah,
to the
like,
point that they take
with,
sick kids to swim with dolphins because it has a beneficial effect.
yeah, a lot of people who swim with dolphins claim the same thing or similar thing, but with that it's infrasonic. But yeah, or ultrasonic rather.
Something. Yes. So there you go. What do you think about all this, Daniel?
Oh, I believe it's like I said, sound travels much easier through material, solids and water. That makes sense. Yeah.
I mean, all animals use it. I mean, look at birds, right? Birds sing, birds of prey, screech and everything. Obviously, animals roar and they corral other animals. So, and, again, back to humans, we use it too, but it's all spells, really, isn't it? It's what we would call spells because it's vibration with intention. I mean, I guess that's what a spell is, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. Bernie is still saying goodbye. All right. So what I'm going to do is share the screen here again, and I've got like a video just to show a bit of how sound affects. Now, this is in water.
4 hertz.
Turn the volume down. Binaural 4 hertz, and this is water with a light behind it, so you can see it a bit better. Let's hope. Where is it? I'll fast forward. There you go. So, I mean, it just shows you that frequency is sound because that's producing what we're looking at, plus it's light, plus it's form because, we're seeing light and form, right? So everything starts off as frequency and then we just see it in different expressions when it changes frequency, like we just saw.
Yeah, cymatics.
So cymatics, exactly. And these, of course, are the same designs, patterns, geometry that we see everywhere, in star forts, in crop circles, in mandalas that are made, by the Buddhist monks, in symbols, old world symbols.
Yes, symbols on Hindu temples, ancient Hindu temples.
Yep.
A lot of cymatics.
Yeah. Cathedral windows, like the rose windows and the lead light windows we see in cathedrals, and also cathedral floors in the tiling. A lot of them have these shapes as well and these designs. So it's pretty bizarre. And then when you look into the planets as well, the planets all have their own frequency and they match up with, it's on the same scale. And then it just gets so big. That's where you can start to tie in things like astrology and see how different, wandering stars or planets actually do affect us through frequency at different times.
It's got to be the Saturn sound that actually makes the hexagon at its poles.
That's what they say. It's got a hexagon on it.
Sound can be a hexagonal shape.
There's one right there on the screen. You can see it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all the same. It's like everything we look at. It's really just all different expressions of frequency. It's just all different frequencies in physical form. I don't know if you've seen, but that they actually like grow, like they use iron filings and like frequency and like they grow like cities, these little mini cities things. They play like frequency and these iron filings turn into like these little city forms. It's bizarre. But that's it. I mean, and you can go up and down the frequencies. So also these are the good frequencies, and we've all seen Dr. Emoto's work where he shows what happens when you tell water you hate it. So imagine, what spells are doing, what we, when we talk to people, when we listen to people, when we drink water, when we talk to ourselves, this is what it's doing to the water in our bodies. Well, hopefully it's doing this because these are good vibrations, right? I'll just stop there rather than bad vibrations, which would obviously, create a bad effect. Like at the concert, and this is the thing, right, with heavy metal. I used to be way into heavy metal and, I still like a lot of it, but, we have to understand a lot of those frequencies aren't going to be necessarily good for us, are they? Mm. There's a reason that heavy metal, they all wear black, they use their devil horns, the imagery is all about death, destruction, So who have we got here in the chat? We call a jail term a spell or a sentence. Very nice. So there is sound and form connected to time. And this is the other thing about words, right, and spelling. So that's a good one. Jail sentence. I once heard the forest earth humming on mescaline. There you go. They've done experiments where they play music to plants, and some will, they grow better, and also where they hook up electrodes and they listen to the sound that plants make. Every plant has its own frequency, and I saw this one where they did it with tomatoes, and they got a GMO tomato, and it had no frequency. But then they played the normal tomatoes, they played the frequency to the GMO tomato, and then it started playing the same frequency. It found its frequency. It's bizarre.
That's fascinating.
Isn't it?
There's a dude on Reddit who does live streams sometimes, and he's built a modular synthesizer, which is a pretty impressive bit of kit in its own right. But what's fun is that he hooks it up to a Fly Garrick mushroom and has Fly Garrick playing music.
Yeah,
it's actually pretty good.
Yeah, I've seen them do it with mushrooms too. It's bizarre. And also, I mean, trees also communicate with each other, instantly. Like that, a lot of I've forgotten what it's called, but they have this poison in them basically, and it's like a bug repellent. It's the same stuff that's in tomatoes and all this kind of stuff. And so if a bug or an animal, if a giraffe or something walks up and starts eating the leaves off a tree, it'll send a signal to all the other trees of the same species in the area, and they all start producing this chemical which makes their leaves bitter. But it happens instantly, and they try and tell us it's a chemical thing, but they've done tests and literally they all change at the same time. So that's got to be frequency too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello, Jim. How you doing? Welcome. Where is Bernie? Come on, Bernie. This is supposed to be your show, buddy. Making me sit here and run it. Shoot a thrill, AC/DC. Shoot a thrill, Plater. Oh no, let's not do that. I mean, that's like that. The lyrics in heavy metal. I mean, you know, you can see why people come out of heavy metal, you know, concerts, and there's always fights or they're smashing shit up, and you know, just the lyrics, they're just not good, right? Most of them. It's just all fear.
Yeah, there's just too much fear in the world, especially now. When politics are gone. It's so crazy.
It is, and that's what's happening at the moment. It's just giant spells. It's all spells, right? Now apparently people are going to start turning into monkeys. You know, it's just another spell, right, to keep us in fear while they can hide other things that are going on in the background. I mean, yeah, it's just bizarre. And someone did say, yes, you can speak to plants, and we always hear that, right? And of course, who are the ones that speak to plants? They're the crazy people, right? Apparently, because you're not supposed to do stuff like that, because you might figure out that everything is vibration and frequency. Ra doesn't seem to work in a veggie patch. Well, Ra, I think what you need to do is dress up in a dress and dance around serenading them opera style and see if that works and get back to us. I think that will work. Good moment to be a truther or a truer. But yes, I agree. Nothing but the facts. His Highness. I had a vision of Starforts being a creation of Lichtenberg incidents involving water and metals in the ground. I mean, who knows, right? I suppose, you know, if you're talking water, I suppose they could form the shapes. You know, we see Lichtenberg, what are they called? Lichtenberg zaps all over the place. You know, mountain ranges look like Lichtenbergs. So who knows? Something, you know, plasma apocalypse, and this is another thing is resets, right? Again, all frequency. When the frequency changes, we get a reset, and everything changes. Very dark lyrics. I agree. I agree. Freemasonry, uproot it in Oz. Yes. Insidious anti-Mason. The Freemasons, right? That's what they stole. They got their Freemasonry. Spelling, cursive. That's a good one. They teach us cursive writing. Right? And of course, they always tell us it's got to be right or else it's wrong. And right means that you just are basically parroting what they tell you, right? And then if you join those Masons that are free, they want to give you rights as well, don't they? They want to take you through their rights, you know. So you know, all this spelling. What does the word right mean? I mean, it's really RITE, right? Right? God, I keep saying it. So words, man. There's so much in words that they've done.
Have you heard in America? Have you heard in America they use spelling bee?
Yeah. The spelling, yeah, like the little test spelling bee.
Yeah, as in being, but also bee. It's supposed to be bee as in the insect.
Yeah. You know,
that has so many connotations to
as
it.
in like be the spell. Broadcasting, like a news broadcast. They're just casting a broad spell. Oh, Melinda, lucky you. Your feet and legs are vibrating. Oops. Oh God, what am I doing? I'm missing. God, I'm not good here, am I? Hello from
All right, I'm back now. How about we load up some of those resonance pictures, like of
cool.
the harmonics with star forts and some of the cymatic experiments with the sound, and how they tie in those same cymatic frequencies or the same shapes as the star forts.
Yes, we got lots of that kind of stuff. Spell, another one. People go out for a spell, right? Oh my gosh, I'm so far back on the comments. Hello, everyone who's here. If I've missed you, I'm sorry. There's many, many comments here. What have we got? 180 watching us live. Well, that's just, is that total? I don't know. All right. Danny May, just found your channel about a week ago and have been bringing out all your videos. I love them. Thank you, Danny. And before we get on to Star Thoughts, if you happen to be in Melbourne or indeed anywhere in Australia, there's an event, a live event coming up, the 25th of June. You'll find the link. Gosh, I haven't put it under this video on the last Tartaria Australia video, but more coming out about that. So yes, come and join us. All right, what am I doing, Bernie? I'm sharing pictures of frequency. Is that correct?
Yeah, the cymatic frequencies there and the resonance patterns that through the seismograph or
So like the oscilloscope.
oscilloscope. There we go. That's the word.
Alrighty, where is it?
So Dan, a quick question in the meantime. What sort of like power or signals or energy frequencies are you putting into your coils? And is it steady? Are you pulsing it? Are you looking for
Well,
resonance frequencies? What
yeah,
exactly?
originally I just used AC light dimmer switch and then potentiometer, like rheostat for the DC coils. And I resonated electrically, using the knobs, and got it to float. I didn't want that. I wanted to make. I was watching Tom Bearden videos, and I thought I was going to make an over unity device or something like that, ambient energy device. But instead, they floated. Yeah, and since I've been uncovering like what happened and why they behave that way, I began understanding of better ways to improve it. And yeah, pulsing high frequencies and longitudinal waves on the bottom coil and high frequencies on the top would definitely improve it. Possibly warp it, warp time. And the possibilities also are teleportation in the very center of these coils. That might be a strong possibility in the future, and that would definitely be about how resonating frequencies. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, I appreciate that. No, this is crucial information. So I've built several different Keshi coils, which are like triple solenoid coils round in 9 series. You can kind of see some of them behind Bert and Ernie there. Those are the standard ones, but I also experimented with other different windings of my own. And I've never ran or hooked them up or tested them or experimented with putting any energy, electricity, or anything through them so far, because I know that like you can go wrong very quickly and you can create very harmful, dangerous fields and pulses if you're doing the wrong stuff, right? So I've held off on it. But now that we're connecting with more and more people doing it with different that have already started.
Borax is a good way to make shielding. Using borax would help protect you from the strange radiation and whatnot. That would be very helpful. Yeah, you really need to protect yourself. It's very important. I'm going to be using a 1500 watt Class D amplifier, and I have an audio oscillator. and that's what I'll be hooking up to the central
Nice.
coil in my system.
Yeah, see, exactly. The audio oscillator for the signal pulsing, right? That's
Yeah.
what's so crucial, and that a lot of people and modern science hasn't incorporated or used or even begun to understand. And yet, for my own
Well,
alchemy and the
the oscillator I
transmutation,
got, the
it's the key.
the oscillator I got though came from Lockheed 13, their missile squadron, 13th Missile Squadron. So Lockheed is using sound technology with their missiles and
Exactly. They've classified the science of sound for military purposes ever since like the 1947 or like end of World War II, basically. And it's such a critical part of quantum, both consciousness and like connecting to the metaphysics and the spiritual realm, but also in science development, free energy, electricity, magnetism, but and life. And it's that there's these we've been hijacked by being put on 440, which is completely out of tune with the
yeah,
resonance of this entire planet and the life of this planet. And that's what is so crucial of discovering and looking into the science of sound, what the Schumann resonance truly is, this 432 hertz that is going through our entire planet, all life forms in nature, everything is resonating at this specific sound frequency. And we used to, and all of a sudden now we're not, and we were put off. And like, I think the official story is through the Rockefeller Foundation, and the legend is that it was Goebbels or one of the SS High Himmler, I think it was, that put it through, or whatever it was, discovered this 440.
hammer.
And yeah, the cymatic frequencies, Campbell, if you can find a picture of the
Yeah.
difference between 440 and 432, that would be a good one to put to reference.
Oh.
Yeah, it used to be A440. Now it's C440.
Oh.
And I have instruments that were tuned, back in the old days, from the 1800s, and I have seen things move using a cornet or something made from that era. So there's a lot more power to that other tuning.
Okay, you have to give me a minute, I think. Hang on. Where are we? So, what do you want?
Cymatic frequency 440 hertz versus 432. And so how the beetles and bumblebees and all of the insects, it appears they fly rather through vibration and harmonic resonance, essentially the same technology that this acoustic levitator is using to levitate these 3 pieces of styrofoam, as opposed to actual physical lifting of the air through their wings. And it could be, as insects, are they all vibrating and levitating off of putting out this 432 hertz, as is the Earth, and then canceling out each other and creating this electromagnetic or harmonic bubble, anti-weight bubble, or whatever it is.
Well,
It could be that insects and birds might be flying due to acoustic levitation, opposed to what we believe to be what would the term be?
Mechanical, I guess.
Yeah, mechanical, and there we go. Mechanical energy due to the air. Oh God.
Well, I mean, they say, they didn't tell us that the bumblebee can't fly, so clearly.
Grebenikov or
Yeah, exactly, Dan. Grebenikov, the Russian Viktor Grebenikov's work.
Yeah.
During the Soviet times that came out. Yeah. See right
Well,
there, that this
when you look at
beautiful
this
sun
compared to this, this is like you can see this because it's like to push something you need resistance, right? You can't push something unless you have resistance. You need the opposing force, or else you're just going forward, right? So you can see in a pattern like this, there's room for things to go out and things to come in. So there's room for two forces, where this is just a big bleh, right? It's taken up the whole frequency spectrum, basically. So, I mean,
giant blob of clusterfuck compared to perfect symmetry.
Yeah, and so this is like an interaction, and this is just like
described that perfectly, brother.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. So there you go. That's. Oh, my mouse keeps dying. I think my batteries are dying. Hang on.
440 hertz also shows the sixfold symmetry, the hexagonal symmetry, which is a two-dimensional representation of a cube.
There you go. Yeah, you can see some symmetry there. This is on a soundboard, so you can see it there as well. And
that's
even
amazing.
here. And then, of course, we have
like what some like bacteria, protozoa, and cells look like too, like location in nature.
Yep, and of course it's all linked up with color and sound, and
which connects light to sound.
And that
and someone said that before, right? Hertz.
If one person is sick with a virus, and that the same resonance of that virus is projected onto someone next to that person, they will get the same virus.
Well, that's what this.
No doubt, that's right. If they start resonating, they get into tune with it onto that same wave, and that's how it comes in. That makes a lot of sense, Daniel.
Entrainment, is that what it's called? Entrainment?
In tune, yeah, I guess same.
Entrainment, like so when they get clocks, grandfather clocks and things, and they put heaps of them in a room.
That's the term. I did not know that.
Entrainment, I think it's called. Yeah, they all start going the same. So there you go. So I mean, that's what they're doing to us, right? Entrainment, training us. Got to go to training, then you'll be in training, right? You'll be in step with everyone else. Got to go to the school so you can have the uniform.
Sarah never joined and Richie never joined.
Sorry, who, what?
Nobody waiting in the back room still?
Nobody else. No, it's just two of your cameras waiting in the back room.
Okay. Actually, I might switch up to the other camera upstairs. That laptop was better that I had the Ominous on, so I guess bring that back up when I get up there. Oh, there we go. Perfect. Yeah, so sadly, I guess Sarah, she was supposed to join in with this one, but we had talked yesterday, and then I don't know, maybe she's in a different time zone, wasn't able to, it was too late, but she was, and her and 007 Richie, but he's in the Canary Islands, right? So sadly, it's too late for him by the time we went on as well. But Sarah, I guess we'll have her on in the next episode if she's unable to come in tonight, was going to present a bunch of how she uses sound waves and measures sound waves within the brain for both hypnotic, but for like sleeping and dreams and all of that sort of research. And she actually got a degree in that field. And there we go. Even better. Can we put Dan on the larger screen there? Mr. Foster has his double bifilar coil to show us.
That'll give you an idea of what it looks like when they're put together. But I need to put
positive and negatives
forward or the column coils, but that gives you an idea of what it is. uh,
Do you mind showing inside dual bifilar? Yeah, just do this,
yeah,
confirming you've got the exact one that Jeremiah has built as well.
yeah. There's the inside. Yep.
And then do you have the core, the double bifilar core?
Don't have. I haven't
one?
made those yet.
Okay,
So
so Jeremiah's actually got more of that
Jeremiah's
one built.
ahead of me. Yeah, Jeremiah. Yeah, he's a
JP
straight
is
up
awesome.
Yeah.
Sadly, hopefully, JP, if you're watching, please do join in if you can. He might still be caught up in the private after our alien scientist. I don't know.
Someone
I'll text him.
They adjourned, and he gave several people the link to this show. I was expecting him to come on and actually show the coils that he made. He wraps coils better than I do.
Yeah, last night I showed him a bunch and I had some of the footage, but he asked me not to put it forward yet. Before we were making sure that you were okay, before we were going to release anything and let it be in your hands to proceed, sort of thing. And just for those that tuning in, there's Esra, hey, sister, I emailed you the link. If speak of
is
the
she in the chat, is she?
in the chat. Esra, check your
it's Esra. Oh, I didn't hear what you were saying. Okay. Oh, okay. I know Esra. I didn't. What? Have you two been talking behind my back? Hey, what's going on here?
It all happened in the last one. Anywho.
Did it? What?
Update for the so. Also, why we were delayed tonight is that Rex and Leak Project, we were going to premiere this being the first time, but sadly, him and his wife, family, they were late getting back. They were on the road, so they're trying to make it, and then it was just too late that they couldn't partake tonight. So the next episode 5. It'll probably be 2 weeks from now. And Ominous is also a co-host with this each time, so it'll be all of us but it'll also be with Rex next time. And Rex has done years upon years of research into monitoring the Schumann resonance, looking into it and trying to understand it, and reporting like weekly, monthly variations and how it's grown and keeps spiking and keeps growing. And that was a major part of what we were planning on presenting tonight. That's why it's been a chaotic shit. So pretty awesome to be honest.
Dinosaurus has let us down again. And I just want to say hello, Melinda. We're listening to you. You are significant. Everyone say hello to Melinda. And someone asked before about a meteor. Is there a meteor tomorrow? Is it real? I haven't heard anything about a meteor. But
a meteor shower.
Meteor shower.
Mark Sokol had mentioned it in APEC earlier at the end of it.
Okay.
Supposedly it's a weak one, but that this year it might be extra spectacular because some sort of event happened and we're going to go through a major part of it or something. Supposedly it's either tomorrow or Monday, depending on the time zone that you're in.
Yes. Dorf has said, why don't we get some mercury, put it in a vortex with an electrocity and spin it? Because we don't have enough mercury. It's illegal. We know some people who have some, but you can't.
I do actually plan on eventually experimenting with that
to have ammonia and
we want to. Because all you do apparently, I've seen there's videos out there. You just need to spin it, and it starts levitating stuff.
Yeah,
it creates lots of mass.
And also in a oh god, what are they called? A spinny wheel, not centrifuge.
They are a type of centrifuge, essentially.
Is that what they call? Yeah, when you spin it in those, and that they become like a power generator motor type thing. But yeah, I mean, if anyone has big reserves of mercury, keep it to yourself and somehow surreptitiously get it to one of us and we will spin it around. Right round,
I
baby.
am
Right
actually
round.
multi-dimensional there.
Well,
I go by multi geometry,
exactly.
existence
We
in the
don't know where
universe.
the power comes from Mercury. It seems to be pulling it out of the ether or out of some different reality, right? And then we have red Mercury, which takes it a step further. So
Yeah.
Mercury, and of course Mercury, the planet, and then of course,
Also, if you add ammonia to the mercury, becomes superconducting.
What was that? Add ammonia.
Yeah, ammonia with the mercury.
Wow.
Yeah, that was mentioned today. Michael mentioned it on the APEC conference earlier.
Oh, cool. All right, we have Esra. Hello, welcome.
How's my sound now? Esra. Hey.
Do we call you Esra or Sra? Sorry, we can't hear you. I think you're muted. Do I need to unmute you? No. Are you see the little microphone yet? If you hit that, we should be able to hear you. And I've put you on full screen.
You hear me?
I'll take you off so then everyone's not staring at you. Everyone can see it.
Can you hear me okay yet?
Now we can hear you. Hello.
Okay, good. That's why it took me a while. I was having issues with my mic, and now it was set on the wrong one.
It's always
Hi, how are you doing? Thank you.
Good. Hello.
Yeah, welcome.
Welcome.
We're talking frequencies, and talking is frequencies, right? So there you go. Something in there for everyone, I think. And now that you're here, I'm going to quickly run off to the toilet and leave you to talk. I'll be back in 2 minutes. So, BurnEye, are you there?
Yeah, Cambell, can you hear me?
I can.
Good. And can you make it screens for all?
I can, I hope.
Before you leave, good sir.
Oh. There. All right. I shall be back in 2 minutes. You've got the floor, BurnEye, so be interesting.
Perfect. Welcome. First, would you like to give yourself a little introduction and what you're planning to share tonight, good lady?
Thank you, Bernie. Very sweet. Yeah, I'm Sarah. I'm my background is actually in sleep medicine. I've been doing that for about 13 years. So I started doing sleep studies. The funny story is that I actually started as an office assistant at a sleep lab, and then the doctor that I worked for, he was actually considered one of the original neurologist sleep doctors in Oregon, and this is in the United States, of course. And he asked if I wanted to become a sleep tech. And so I ended up doing my own follow-up care, though, and just kind of grandfathered into it that way. But I got really into, I was already into alternative medicine, but really through my field, because we didn't emphasize any kind of big pharma, any kind of medications. We definitely focused on alternative therapies and trying to get to the core of the problem instead of just providing medications, more or less. But also, like, oxygen, was a very common issue. Patients just were placed on oxygen, and the doctor I work for was trying to get to the bottom of that, because your lungs are going to actually weaken with the use of continued oxygen instead of strengthen, because they're getting what they need, right? So, yeah,
That's
through
very interesting, actually. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh yeah, no, definitely.
Oxygen is so key. And in my alchemy studies, it's like as soon as these elements, when they're monoatomic, supposedly they're super powerful, good for you. But as soon as they oxidize, turn diatomic into oxides, they become absolute poison. So very fascinating that if, like you just said, getting to gin as well can become harmful to the human body.
I was on oxygen after a few years back, and I couldn't believe how weak it made me. and it got to a point where I'd have to take it off, and when I went to go to the bathroom, because the line wasn't long enough, and I could barely make it out of the bathroom back to the oxygen. I mean, I nearly passed out every time.
It's like, yeah, you became dependent on it. You almost forgot how to function. And that's what I've seen myself. And so our goal was to get patients off of that and more or less retrain you how to breathe. And now, I dealt with a lot of sleep apnea, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard is snoring, and a lot of people end up on machines. And by the way, if you're stuck on one, I'm happy to go over that in detail. I was really good with the mask, but just getting used to it. But regardless, if you really think about what I would train patients how to get used to, it was breathing techniques. And I think a lot of us have heard about Wim Hof. That's just one example, because it goes a lot further back than that. But just doing daily breathing techniques can just retrain everything. Can actually open up your airways.
Heard of Wim Hof? Do you mind just giving us noobs a little rundown? And that is absolutely awesome that you're getting people off of dependent medications, both like pills, pharmaceutical drugs, as well as just pure oxygen, but getting rid of these dependencies, and that it's as something as simple as just how you breathe, train yourself to breathe and how you breathe, and breathing in resonance, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So here's the really interesting factor is that, before I get into the other part here, but didgeridoo, so throat muscle exercises, throat singing, our dear beatboxer, all of these things are actually ways to strengthen the inner throat muscles. Because I actually went to my doctor, or one of the doctors, excuse me, that I worked for, and I'm like, we're talking about alternative therapies, and I'm like, have you ever taken a TENS unit? If you guys have never heard of a TENS unit, it's something that they use in physical therapy. Okay, yeah, to help relax your muscles, and it's like gives it like a vibration. It's really about right flow.
It also helps with
Anyway.
my paralysis. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, and so similar to sacral stretching, which has a lot to do with the hips, right, in that area. And so you're opening up that area, getting that flow to move. Sorry, now I forgot what I was going to say. More or less, yeah, I totally forgot. It'll come back to me here in just a second.
I pulled gold out of an avocado seed.
You're doing awesome.
Sorry, say that again, Daniel. I'm sorry.
I was able to pull gold out of an avocado seed using a TENS unit.
Interesting.
Can you describe the process on that, please?
Yeah, it was years and years ago. I have a TENS unit. I'd have to find my TENS unit and show you the settings. I put it on a hard pulse, and I offset the two patches in a more of a phase situation where they weren't both as strong. One was pumping lighter than the other one, and I didn't write it down exactly what I did, but if I find that unit, I can come on it and show you just by looking at it, the settings on it. But yeah, you should give it a try.
Awesome, because like me and Mike have discussed, and I've seen videos of it. A few different groups, they do a type of what's essentially cold fusion, medium fusion, temperature-wise, but using industrial microwaves, melting glass bottles, and there's a percentage they get like 15 or 20% pure gold out of that. And yeah, it's interesting, all these different types of combining high frequency, high energy waves together, and these different types of transmutational, transdimensional fields and interactions and stuff that happen. And it's also essentially where consciousness combines in with that same 0 point or
dimensional barrier wall fractal into the higher dimensional realms. And yeah, it's one massive universal Pandora's box that we are trying to figure out together, really.
And I
So-
remember I was going to talk about balance a little bit, because you were talking about like having too much of something. It's sort of when I talk about using apple cider vinegar as like a natural way to help you detox. But if you take too much of it, you end up becoming acidic, even though it's supposed to be an alkaline, right? And but yeah, with the TENS unit, I do remember I was asking my doctor if more or less he had just used a TENS unit to stimulate the throat muscles and mimic the ability to just stent it open, because that's really what we were doing with a lot of these devices. We're just trying to retrain the lungs how to breathe and stent and open up airways that are issues for some people, where you would consider surgery in some cases. But I just saw a lot of inflammation, which obviously is associated with a lot of the diseases that were coming in. I also saw a lot of anxiety, which I want to get into because that's my connection to the frequency. And a lot of the training that they're doing now is something that if Kevin's on, he's aware of this because he actually did this himself. But there's something called bioneural feedback, and it's light and sound therapy, where they're using different pulses and vibrations to retrain your brain waves. And I definitely saw that when I did sleep studies. I definitely saw those kind of impedances in the theta, the delta waves, the really big wavy, where your brain is supposed to be relaxing and your body's focusing on the function here to at its optimal. But I would see that alpha show up in those waves at that time, and that's where you see that anxiety.
This is freaking awesome. Just to explain a little bit of like the difference of the different types of waves, and I guess I'm struggling for words.
Oh, Bernie, we just lost you all of a sudden.
Sorry. The difference between an alpha, a theta, and like why it's so important, or what parts they come through in a normal sleep cycle.
Okay, yeah. And actually, to be honest, all of these waves can show up even when you're awake. Like actually daydreaming probably, there's probably mimicking of delta during daydreaming. So it's really about the frequency, the speed of the wave, and the height of the wave. But it's pretty cool to see because when you're awake and you have the alpha waves, you're looking at something that's going to be tighter and closer together, sharper. And as you fall asleep, you're going to watch those waves get looser and a little further apart, a little wavier, right? So when you get to stage 3, which is delta wave, you get to that deep, your brain it's like doing this. It's crisscrossing all over the place. It's very, very wavy. So when you see somebody with high anxiety so stage 3 is something that we supposedly lose as we age. And I've seen 80-year-old patients have great stage 3 sleep. So I think that's just that's programming a little bit on what they're telling us. But really what you see with stage 3 is you're going to see the body have the best respirations possible while you watch the brain almost decompress, right? You're going to watch the breathing be at its optimal, the heart at its optimal. I almost never see any complications. Well, turn it around to REM sleep. So REM sleep actually looks almost like alpha. Most people, if they weren't trained like I am to see all the other parameters, you'd think the person was awake while you're watching them in REM sleep. And then I can actually see the eyes move in accordance to their dream. So sometimes, to be honest, I can kind of tell what kind of dream they were having. So the next morning, I could be, a little bit dead on with saying like, "Hey, someone was chasing you, weren't they?" Because we were monitoring the EMG, which is the muscle movement, and we were monitoring the legs, especially because a lot of sleep disorders deal with restless leg syndrome. But we're monitoring your heart at the same time, so I can see that intensity come up. I can see the eyes go crazy, and I can see the legs start twitching at the same time. but it's very interesting to see the difference between somebody with more or less a normal cycle to somebody with like a heavy anxiety cycle to somebody who has actually like a breathing disruptions and what that does to them. So there's a lot to it. And I could talk about it forever. But yeah, hopefully I explained the waves a little bit. You know, and I could actually, there's like a cool little diagram, but just kind of showing you what they look like a little bit. But I have seen, and one of the things I do like to talk about real quick, the last little bit, is that the phone interference. We actually had to pull it out of the room more than, off, like pretty much all the time, because it would start to impede. And it's not artifact. There's a difference between artifact and impedance. And
so cell phones would directly impede people's ability to get into delta waves, is what you're saying, essentially, while they were sleeping?
Not necessarily, but it would definitely increase the alpha. And then also we'd actually see odd signals pop up. Almost, I don't want to say it for sure, but, you know, like potential for like seizure-inducing type activity. And we did, I was, okay, so there's a different type of technician. I'm supposedly a technologist. But there are ones that are trained, and I have done more all-encompassing, but there's ones where they do like 3-day long seizure studies. And so it's a little bit different than what I was doing. And I also dealt with a lot more of the respiratory. So I was actually trained like a respiratory therapist to run ventilators, which is a whole other conversation that we could have. So it's a little bit different with that. So I was trained to see seizures. I knew how to find them, but it was definitely, you know, different.
Excuse me.
Give you a rundown.
All right. I've just come in obviously halfway through. So I've been listening to 528 hertz for the last week or so. And sleeping.
You know the difference.
Yeah. Like literally you put it on and you just go straight to sleep and then you just wake up. like literally. And I have problems turning my brain off sometimes, and it works a treat. So I'm going to keep doing it, but I've heard people say that over time, you know, you start feeling better and getting more energy, and it's just frequency again. Just interesting. Can I ask a question? Melinda's saying she said a few times that she can feel her feet and legs vibrating. Anyone got a comment or anything on that?
Like right now, or when she's sleeping?
Good question, Melinda. Right now, or when you're sleeping?
If it's restless leg syndrome, actually, like banana tea is a wonderful thing. Yeah. Like a lot of times there's a potassium deficiency associated with that restless leg syndrome.
Okay.
It can be more complicated than that, but it's actually a very helpful tool.
Right. I used to get that heaps, restless leg. Banana peel tea is you'll be jumping up and down.
Yeah.
Interesting. And that's the thing, isn't it? Like all these, you know, maladies we get or whatever, these diseases, they're all, you know, cured so simply, really, when you know what it is.
And honestly, like for me, what it's coming down to with my connection with the frequencies, and like I've had just way too many patients tell me alternative treatments. That's sort of why I've gone the other route. But it's definitely coming down to flow. It's the ebb and flow concept. I mean, it's the wax and wane. It's when your heart and your lungs are working properly, your blood's flowing properly. So like what I've in my ailments and going through acupuncture, which is about getting your chi to flow, right? It's about removing those blockages. So if you deal with everything, but you have a trauma that you haven't dealt with, a personal trauma that's holding somewhere in your body, you know, that could be the problem, and you have to release it. Because to me, it's like a ball of energy that's stuck somewhere that needs to be released to allow the flow.
Yeah. That's exactly what they do. Yeah, with what's it called? I can't remember. With needles.
Acupuncture. That's what I was. And I've done that myself.
I've been putting it in my hand lately. It's great. I walk in, he just starts shoving needles in my hand, and then like, and because it's still numb, I can't feel a lot of them. Then I just start screaming. He's like, "Oh, okay, good, that's working." Like, yeah, thanks, mate.
Honestly, yeah. I have so I'm very open and honest, and I have had women issues and cramp related, and actually like Western med doctors really disappointed me with their answers and trying to resolve it right. Well, I went to a naturopath through a acupuncturist, and what they more or less figured out was that I have a blockage in my intestines. It's not actually related directly to like my ovaries. It is a little bit, but it's actually related to my intestines. So when I have a better flow going that way, but the acupuncture, it was interesting because I could feel like this. I wouldn't call it full on pain. It was uncomfortable like for the first 2 sessions, and then after that, I actually felt it break out of that area, and then they put, you know how Cambell, how they put the needles in corresponding spots to get the flow to go right. And that's exactly what I felt. I felt it break, and then I just felt it just start to go through my whole body, and
Wow.
and everything just it's amazing. And I actually am very emotional. So when you were talking about them putting it in your hand, they've done that for me too, to actually help with my tears, to help them flow better, because I get so emotional so easily, and I'll just start crying when they do it. And they'll put it, I think they put it, I want to say it's like, on the side of one of my fingers over here. That's something I'd like to learn more. Yeah.
Yeah, well, once I've got this done, I want to get like a like, I don't know, a healing session. I've never had one like where they just lie you down and just just basically try and get all your energy pathways unblocked. I think that, I mean, I've definitely felt it where they've put needles in and you can just feel it buzz, and you can almost feel the energy go around it. It's just bizarre, isn't it? It's like this but
yeah, it's like it's not painful, but it's an odd sensation, almost a little uncomfortable, like something's stuck and it needs to, like I have a bad knee, and if my knee gets stuck, it's that feeling I have to kind of get it unkinked. And that, but I'm similar. I'm actually so I want to become a Reiki practitioner as one of my goals as part of my healthcare career. And as part of my channel starting up, I want to document my process, and I'm going to go. I finally found who I think is the right. It's taken me a while to kind of figure it out. But she's a nurse too. She's got double credentials as a nurse, and then she's a Reiki master. And I'm gonna document that process of going through that initial healing and then starting the training. That's my hope.
Nice. So you're have you got Reiki, or you're going to do Reiki and you're going to like tie that in with the frequency? I mean, Reiki, Reiki is the same thing, because when you get your Reiki, I mean, what is it, 3? I think each time you get like when you get your level, they literally meditate and put like symbols, like somatic symbols into your mind, don't they?
Yeah, and that's why the whole like Somna Energetics, with the sound practitioner, the tuning fork concept, if you combine that with it, and I want to do that, but to see what's so interesting is that something that's accepted right now in therapy, in Western medicine, as a form of mental health therapy, like I was talking about, is this bioneural feedback, which I'm sorry, I'm stumbling a little bit, but BurnEye knows. He's had Kevin on, who's actually, and you've talked with Kevin, because he has some experience with that in his past where he did that, and it's like it wasn't quite bioneural feedback, but it was like light and sound therapy. So it's all about that vibrational concept. So it all connects. If they're doing this now in quote unquote Western, but Reiki's been around for well, they say since.
You're so bang on, Sarah. Like, and because the Eastern cultures and like sciences practitioners, it's thousands of years old, and it's all about tuning the right frequencies within the harmonics of both the sound, the mind, and the body. And that's awesome that you're combining those studies as well. I've been wondering about it myself with like these Keshi pens that I'm gonna start doing episodes on how to make your own, but they're essentially plasma coated triple solenoid coils with crystals, and they kind of resemble Reiki wands a bit, and it's all just these field force interactions, these frequencies, and the power of sound and mind waves, and these alpha data or delta waves, the brain waves you're talking about. It's very interesting of what sort of range do they operate in compared to like magnetic waves, electric waves, and sound waves.
What are the frequencies of it's delta, is it? Sorry, I missed the first half of this conversation. What's the healing frequency like? Is that what you're talking about when you're asleep? There's a frequency that's
yeah, and well, technically, like delta waves, they run like generally like waves run at a lot lower hertz than this 432 that we're hearing.
Yeah.
But my theory is that's all the 369. What does it actually multiply to, right? What is it fraction by? Yeah. So like delta is 0 hertz to 4 hertz. That's why I was talking about. It's like compared to alpha, which I think can go up to 14 hertz. Sometimes I have to I apologize. Sometimes I have to remind myself. It's easy to get it all mixed up. 8 to 12 hertz. It can actually go higher than that. We've seen, and that's what I've talked about, is like we're seeing an intensity, and that's what I'm seeing with it, like I see a lot of mental health and sleep, and to see the difference between somebody who's had a stroke and somebody who's got high anxiety. You're talking about somebody who's operating on a very the height of their waves are very low, the speed of their waves and they're awake are very slow. But somebody who's got high anxiety is going to be pulsating and pushing higher waves. But regardless, I think there's something more to it that like we're not studying, like that my field has not studied, and that's what I want to do, because I believe that I can show that with the EEG, based on what I've seen enough, I feel like, studies to know. And this is what they're doing with that bioneural feedback. It's all about calming that brain. It's rewiring. And let's take somebody who has PTSD and see what these kind of effects on, because you're talking about some of the worst mental health disorders that they don't have answers for, right? Now, I want to also go further than that, though. I want to do with seizures. There's some pretty significant mental health disorders that they really don't have a grasp on. Narcolepsy, they finally have a medication that helps. But you're talking about people that just suffer all day. They never feel like themselves. And their disorder is related to REM. They have something called REM behavior disorder. They actually act out their dreams and don't remember them. And that's often associated with sleep paralysis. But they won't tell you that most of us have all had sleep paralysis multiple times, because if you do, you supposedly have narcolepsy, and that's not true. I even stumped my doctor because I was like, yeah, I had it all the time as a kid. And he's like, you did? You don't have narcolepsy? So anyway, it's obviously very complicated.
That is very noble of you and quite an awesome plan. I fully support you. Rex, if you want to join in, I emailed you the link, brother. Feel free. Try her out. If not, catch you next time. Cambell, please do go further with what you're showing on the oscilloscope, it is called, correct?
It's an oscilloscope. Oh my gosh, the batteries are dying on my mouse. Hang on one sec. Basically, though, what it is it's there we go. It's frequency. So they play frequency into a machine, and it creates a pattern based on that frequency. And as we see, they're very similar to all the shapes. I'm going to say star forts, obviously, but to cymatics, to crop circles, to sound signatures, to the frequency signatures of the planets, all this kind of stuff. It's all the same, and it's obviously sacred geometry. And here we have a star fort, right? So you can see that when we get, that one was pretty good. Pictures like that, we can see that these may be mimicking the actual natural frequencies of the Earth, and so they're built on, you know, energy vortexes, shall we say. Oh my gosh, I might keep losing batteries. Hang on. Let's see, I might have to go and do a battery run. Am I still on? Someone speak. You there, Bernie?
I can hear you.
Oh, you can? You haven't left me?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. We're back. Okay. Sorry. My mouse keeps dying. So here we go. We have some more oscilloscopes. Look at that one. So just frequency. And then, of course, you know, we have it laid out on the ground all around us. Cymatics, bringing matter to with sound. And matter, right? Isn't that an interesting word? You know, does it matter?
It's how these shapes mimic, you know, the shapes of nature.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, like, I mean, it's all nature. There we have some, that's Dr. Emoto's ice crystals.
I reference it so often. With my pages too, which is, it's such a good way to open that door, yeah.
And Mandela's. Oh, look at that one. So I'm trying to find some planets. I do have planets in here somewhere, I think. But I mean, as you can see, I mean, this is like the moon. You know, so it's, you know, the frequency of the moon. So it's all the same. You know, there you go, nature, right? The Nautilus shell is fire, right? The Fibonacci spiral. Oh, come on, pictures.
Everything. It's crazy how much my alchemy experiments, Fibonacci spiral, self-form and self-creates it with layers of water. It's absolutely nuts. The self-organization blows my mind.
Yeah.
JP, you there? What one crazy laser you got, my friend?
Are they on mute? Are you on mute? Because we
I don't
cannot
know.
hear you.
Jeremiah, brother, you there? Do you want to show us the core? So Jeremiah's joined us. I don't think he said anything since he came on
Check,
yet.
dude.
But he's built
Well,
the
that would
inner
explain things, wouldn't
bifilar
it?
coil.
Okay. So
Yes, sir. There you are.
yeah. Yes. So, just verifying, you guys can hear me, right?
Yes,
Yes,
we
sir.
can now.
Okay, good. Because apparently, whatever this service is, something new that I've not used before, I had to post-authorize my microphone access, even though it asked me that initially when I entered. I did not bother to check to see if it was still authorized. So here we go. Anyways, let's take a look at Dan's goodies here, and I'll flip on one more light source so we can get a better view.
Let me.
Don't need light. All right.
That one.
So, what we're looking at here is the top hemisphere coil, and we can tell it's the top because the way the wire is oriented here, we've got our red side of our split conductor wire facing up, and this is the bottom side hemisphere. If you look at it straight on, you see it's looking black. So this is where our negatives are all facing down. Now, just to point out, the Earth, the big ball that we're living on, is negatively charged. It's negatively charged to a very high degree. In fact, according to Feynman and his students, when he asked them to calculate out what the potential of the Earth's energy in the geosphere was between the Earth and the ionosphere, his students calculated out approximately 400,000 volts at 700 million continuous watts of downwards pouring ions from the upper atmosphere towards the ground. Now, 700 million watts may sound like a lot of power, but it's actually not. If we consider what we use just nationally, I mean, we're talking many, many, many gigawatts. Or if we're Back to the Future, many gigawatts. In either case, we need a lot more power than that. But a funny little thing happens when you draw power from the upper ionosphere. As you drain the ionosphere and bring those positive ions down and create a nice plasma ionized path for you to tap your machinery into. They neutralize out the localized ground charge, but there are so many electrons capable of separating that as those positive charges are impacting the ground, they actually create heavy isotopes, freeing more electrons to neutralize out charge. And once you drain the ionosphere, it creates more of a positive or more of a negatively charged space than previously, because it's normally highly positively charged. That means solar particles coming in from our sun are repelled. But in this particular case, as we take more of that positive charge out of the ionosphere, and it becomes slightly more negative, that means more particles from the sun actually enter the Earth's atmosphere. So it's basically inexhaustible. It's not 700 million watts limit. It's many, many gigawatts that we can tap. Always pouring
So
down
essentially,
from the
this is
sky to the ground.
atmospheric electricity you're talking about, correct?
That's right, atmospheric electricity. And all you need to do is tap it with a sharp point sticking up in the air at a very high altitude. Yeah. Well, I mean, there are many other ways. If you wanted to do it Tesla's way, you'd create a giant magnifying transmitter, and you would send approximately 40 million volts out of it in order to create an ionized plasma beam that would reach approximately 40,000 feet into the sky, and channel down a beam of ions that every half cycle would automatically go into your humongous cupola and tap the ground potential as it oscillated, creating ringing waves between itself and the other side of the Earth that would bounce back and forth, amplifying their own effect. But hey, we're not all Tesla.
Artificial lightning that then resonates with the Earth, magnifying the amount coming out.
According to the reports from the time, a bright whitish blue beam that continuously roared like thunder was seen and heard from over 50 miles away.
Wow.
Beam. So not a bolt, but a beam.
A beam. That's right. It's an ionized plasma channel. Electricity wants to bunch into the most convenient and lowest resistance path.
Yep.
The fastest time, if you will. And what it likes to do once it starts to formulate a plasma channel is it will want to keep on flashing. So we've all seen videos of a lightning bolt flashing multiple times. And if the wind is blowing at a fast enough speed, we even get that glory of watching a lightning bolt move from the left to the right or the right to the left. And we get what we call the streamer effect, where you get multiple iterations of the same path right next to each other. Well, the truth is that if you continuously fire that lightning bolt, not maybe 4 or 8 or 15 times, but if you continuously fire that thing 44,000 times a second, well, eventually the plasma is going to become most conductive in the shortest line, which is a line, meaning a beam. And that's the way it naturally forms. It's the easiest way for electricity to leak from the ionosphere down to the Earth, and it takes its shortest path in a very effective way, as nature always does.
So, okay, so he was creating a negatively charged space.
Ion antenna. Yeah, a negatively charged
and it was running down the
to
middle.
neutralize the ionosphere.
So is that similar to what happens when it rains?
Very. The rain droplets will carry down positive ions or positive charge as those positive ions actually impact the clouds or the water droplets in the clouds, and they rip electrons out of those water droplets in order to neutralize. So as those raindrops fall, they also create a downwards air current that neutralizes the ionization. But the ions were already in a certain volume of atmosphere, so as they're stripped away from their previous position, they create what we know as charge separation. Well, with charge separation, the voltages start rising. And instead of a nice smooth gradient for slowly drifting ions down to the ground, now we get tremendous potentials built up, hence lightning bolts.
Okay. Okay, very good. Nice. And yeah, okay. So that's why everyone feels good when it rains, when all the birds come out and start chirping and yeah.
Can you explain the bifilar coil, like the double reverse difilar core that you've got on Daniel's build?
Yes, let's absolutely do that. So here's a piece of the wire that was used. Now, this particular cheap wire is copper-clad aluminum. Ideally, this would be pure copper, low oxygen, but this stuff is cheap, and we're going to give it a try because we're trying to look for a solution that's available almost across the board for everybody. And if this really cheap stuff works, that would be ideal, because that means anybody can replicate it at a very low price. But this is the wire that's used to wind it. So on these coils, there are actually 2 layers. If we look from the side, we see 2 black wires, and we see that these are side by side. So that means what we're looking at on the side is basically those 2 wires sitting like this. They're kind of parallel. But on the top, they're spiraled around 2 layers deep, sort of like this, starting out from the center. And one coil sits inside, and an entirely second coil sits over the top of that first coil. So we're actually looking at 2 separate layers deep, something more like this. If we look from the side, we're looking at basically these 2 layers, 1, 2, on each of these coils. Looking down into the bore, you can see that there are those red, black on this one, and on this one, which is kind of blocked, black, red. But that's how these are wrapped. Now, at exactly half the length of these, which in my case, they are not exactly half the length, but in a more ideal design, if we had thinner wire or thinner insulation, we could do that. We have what are called the bifilar pancakes. So these pancake coils, the way they're wired is they're just that speaker wire, like we looked at, rolled into a spiral. We have 2 of those spirals stacked on top of each other. And the red wire from one side, as we can see here, this is the crossover point, so let's take a close look. The red wire from the inside comes out and connects to the black wire from the outside. And then we end up with one red wire on the outside and 1 black wire on the outside. So that's the bifilar pancakes. You can see that they're just kind of layer wrapped and reversed. Now, these 2 coils are not an exact mirror image of each other. If you would look at them and you could see through them, each of those coils have a cross section. So they cross all the way down. So basically they are reversed mirrored. So you know how if you look in a mirror and you hold an image up to it and you stick it right up to the glass, it's going to be basically a perfect fit. It's going to be identical. Imagine that you took one of those 2 images and you flipped it around. That's the way that these are wound, sort of like a caduceus where you have a crossed wire pattern. It's very important that these wires cross at some arbitrary angle and that they don't perfectly follow each other, because electrons will want to follow both paths simultaneously. Not the electrons in the wire, but the electrons in the atmosphere. And they can't follow both paths simultaneously because they're crossing at an angle. Well, what that's going to do is physically try to rip them out of the atmosphere, creating an ionized zone. And we've all seen lifters and how they fly. You give some ions to a high voltage collector plate, and it gets pulled upwards. This thing's effectively creating ionization at a very low potential once we get it resonating correctly. And the reason why we already polarize this is because we've got a DC charge on these 2 coils. Even though technically they're connected, one side to the other is a very small voltage difference. In this case, it's only about 0.8 or 0.9 volts. But nevertheless, the bottom side has a net negative charge and the top side has a net positive charge. And that means this thing is going to have a preference to create negative ions on the bottom as those fields cross and positive ions on the top as these fields cross. And, well, positives are going to try and neutralize the negative side, and the negative side is going to try to get towards the positive side, but we're closer to Earth than we are to the sky, which means the negative side repels the ground charge. And again, that's an upwards force. So effectively, as far as we theorize, that's how this device should work.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bernie, what's that?
Exactly.
So this is going to be able that we can all build our own hoverboards and better, essentially, and this, you're using speaker wire that's not even pure copper, so it's literally people will be able to use recycled stereo equipment to make these units.
We'll see how well we get it to work out, but basically it's a very simple design, and that's one of the things that made me so fond of it the first time Dan showed me. This was something that was available to the public that could literally save society, heaven forbid something collapse. And this is a technology that, quite frankly, I would label as a freedom technology. Something that if a really bad thing happens on a very large scale, and we don't have the resources to rebuild our country because, say, the gas pumps aren't running, the power's out, how do we get around? Well, if you can build this silly thing out of speaker wire, I mean, that seems like a pretty good solution to me.
So
We don't even need things to collapse. We just need to
start doing this. So the beauty of us all doing this together is that we're figuring it out and becoming independent as a collective, being able to figure out ways that will free ourselves and then free humanity. And another major aspect that I'm going to be working on over the summer is creating and harnessing the hydrogen, the Brown's gas, the HHO mist, whatever it is that creates that super fuel out of electrolysis for a very small amount of electrical input in. So it seems, and it's been so suppressed over the years, that it would be able to be mass produced by everyone and anyone and mixed in with your fuel, right? It's like it doesn't have to wipe out the current system, but it can subsidize your own costs when you're making 50 or 70% out of it out of water and then only buying 50-30% gasoline.
Right. Well, let's look at the facts. Our engines today are computerized and designed to run on petroleum fuels. That means if we immediately just try to stick HHO gas into our engines, they're going to have, most of them at least, a bit of a problem. The other factor is, inside of the fuel that we use, our hydrocarbon gasoline fuel for most automobiles, no matter what octane you choose, you got to realize that as a lubricating agent. So, if there is heat generated during the combustion cycle, those piston rings are going to get hot against the wall, and the petroleum acts as a lubricant that keeps your engine running for a really long time. If we didn't have that lubricant in place, even if the engine was full of oil that's just for the bottom side of the piston, inside the cylinder, you're going to start to generate damage. So if we've heard of the PAP engine, and I imagine some people in this audience have heard of the PAP engine, it is an engine that operates at low pressure. It's a plasma engine, and it's just like a classic automotive engine that burns fuel or burns hydrocarbon fuel, but instead the PAP engine fills its cylinder with inert argon gas, and then through what they call the igniter plug, it slams a capacitor discharge through that low pressure argon gas, and it ignites in such a way that when the plasma combusts, if you will, quote unquote, when the arc establishes, the plasma pressure increases because now you've got lots of electrons flowing through the plasma, and they want to try to align every single dipole moment in all of the atoms as those ions in the argon are aligned. And that creates a pressure inside the cylinder that pushes the piston down. But a funny thing happens when the piston gets to the bottom. The plasma collapses because the volume has been expanded, meaning those individual molecules aren't slamming into each other with as much energy. And that means they can't continuously keep themselves in a highly energized photonic state, so they leak off their extra photons, and the gas cools itself down.
So it's pulsing, collapsing, bursting on its own nature.
Right. Then it implodes. At the bottom of the cycle, it implodes because it cools down, and now the piston wants to suck itself back up. But not only does the piston get sucked up to top dead center, it also cools off the cylinder walls.
Oh, wow. So that they replace spark plugs, basically, that would argon gas.
Yeah, basically that's what they've effectively done. But they didn't change their seals because they didn't need high temperature seals or high temperature rings. They completely changed the design of the piston and the cylinder specifically because the plasma was of a self-cooling nature, and that allowed them to get away with a much more efficient design.
So what about...
It was about, I guess, several 100% efficient, according to the claims, if you believe them.
What about old motors then, like, 80s and before motors? Are they... I mean, I suppose you still have the lubrication problem, don't you, with the HHO, sorry.
Yeah, for the most part, you still would. Even if you do...
I heard diesels are good for it. Is that true, that the diesel engines can easily be converted to the HHO?
Yeah, what are the biodiesel?
Diesel engines are a little bit trickier because you need to remember that they do not have a spark plug, meaning that this highly flammable gas being injected is not going to be trigger ignited. There's a glow plug inside there, which means the thing has to physically compress that gas to the point of self-ignition. So diesel engines are significantly more difficult to convert than a regular gasoline engine, which does have an igniter.
All right, so the main use of the pancake, the double pancake coil thing there, is that like transportation, like levitation engine kind of, rather than free like energy, rather than actually giving an electrical current you can tap?
Well, there's two ways to look at it. If we allow it to rise into the air, and it's going to push against the charge that's underneath it and create its own lift force, it's going to use up, as it's lifting, all the energy that it's accumulated. But now, if we had this same system operating and we forced it through on a flywheel to take a circular motion, then we can force the energy differential back out of the system, creating a sinusoidal oscillation that we can tap.
Cool. Very good. Nice thinking. And I've just got to say, it looks, does that fit inside the ball? Because that looks suspiciously like, like an energy field with a spinning inertial plane in the middle of it if you put all those three things together.
Oh, Dan would tell you that's exactly what it is.
You nailed it, brother.
And the half hemisphere, each of those are magnetic monopoles by themselves.
And now it's
you
so
have full control.
And so, is that a model of the Earth? Is that us on that middle plane in the middle there, spinning around?
Right, you're at the conscious center.
Mm. Wow.
Okay, so
it looks an awful lot like the Keshe ones too. That sorry, just one comment that it looks an awful lot like the Keshe reactors where they put bismuth gold titanium combination in between it and have it react, and then pulsing that with some frequencies. My goodness, it's going to be a fun future.
Well, I say let's hook it up and pump it with the audio amp so we can at least hear it a little bit. And we'll just go ahead and do that now.
All right. Did you have something to say?
I don't need to change
I've never
the
tried this
subject
before. I mean, like I'm just literally ringing this up right now. I've not ran this like this before, so I figure, what's the worst that could happen?
We're praying Jeremiah doesn't blow up. It's a world first.
If I do, it will be epic, I promise.
Am I going to distract you too much by asking you about the water powered engines and the gentleman who was supposedly assassinated due to this technology?
I mean, the gentleman, yes, the multiple gentlemen that were assassinated, allegedly because of working on this technology, freedom technology.
The most famous being Stanley Meyer, I believe.
The famous one, Stan Meyer, right? We've got the newest guy, and I should remember his name, but I've only just seen the story for the first time today. Apparently killed in a mass shooting, working as a security guard at some kind of, I guess, grocery store. Was that right? But also the developer and replicator of Stan Meyer's technology.
Oh.
Yes, rather ironic.
Wow, I hadn't heard that. That's intense.
Oh, if only we could play a news clip of that. Now, I'm on a cell phone, so I'm certainly not equipped to do that, but if somebody else were to, I couldn't say anything to the alternative.
News clips, sadly, usually are copyrighted and screw us over on freaking algorithms.
Well, I suppose it could be, but for the sake of scrutiny, speculation, or criticism, technically it's under fair use authorization. It is a news clip, after all. We just have to be clear and state that it is under fair use.
There's lots of them. Hang on.
Let's see if I can hold it up to the mic and maybe you can hear it.
I think I did already. I have I guess I was tested. I can hear like lower decibels and higher frequencies, but yeah, I can hear it.
So I'm just playing some basic audio into it right now. It is powered up. We can see that we have 5.7 amps going into it. The voltmeter does say 0.5 volts. It's probably something closer to about 3.5 volts. I blew my voltmeter when I was doing scalar interferometry testing with two different coils. Unfortunately, when you combine high-frequency wave outputs to fry your equipment, it's one of the inevitable outcomes. Oh, I can hear it's getting louder. So here's a magnet. This will really let us hear it. And I'm just going to place this next to the coils.
Oh, yep.
Yeah.
So now we can really hear that magnetic field going through. This is supposed to be a more spherical shape. This one is, well, a bit egg-shaped. So I will show you a different variation.
It's an oblate spheroid.
The other variation, the first one I wound wrong. Here we go. So this one actually is a ball. It's the correct shape. And here is that same type of internal pancake double coil, but this one I wound incorrectly the first time. See, these two coils from both sides, they're perfect mirror images, and that means they cross each other's exact path. They don't actually have a crossing pattern.
Yeah.
They have a parallel pattern. And so this one can't do the charge separation job that the internal coils on this one or the external hemispheres on this one can do. Even though these are more even, and technically they have a much more appealing appearance and correct impedance matching for an amplifier like this, or even for the type of input from a light dimmer, as Dan's originally design used, I did wind them so that they're, once again, perfect mirror images instead of one of them being a reversed mirror, creating that charge separation. So that was the issue with the first ball, and it's much easier to wind them larger, but I can't say whether or not that's actually more ideal, because this one hasn't worked correctly because I wound it wrong, and this one I just finished and immediately blew out my light dimmer because it was not designed for inductive loads. I figured it might happen, but, you know, what the heck. Run it anyways and see what happens. Light dimmers aren't expensive. So
the orb, does that draw down atmospheric energy, does it? Is that right? Is that free energy? Is that what
actually it pulls it up from the ground?
Pulls it up from the ground. So basically that's a vehicle there, like the outside's the energy source and the inside's the propulsion, yeah?
Correct, yeah. The polarization on the inside is going to create the direction of the vector force, and the outside is going to block the ability of the inside electric and magnetic field to couple with the Earth's gravitational field, allowing the full strength unleashed of the Lorentz force for those charged particles that are being generated at the cross sections between the stripped conductors and the coated conductors.
And so will it be steerable? Will it go sideways, or will it just
go be steerable with something as simple as tiny little neodymium magnets that you could move around inside the small model, or in something larger, either a multitude of these things, preferably say 3, for example, 1 on each corner of the craft, or just simply moving neodymium magnets to polarize or preset that field so that the ions have a differential preference in which way they will flow. And you could also steer it that way mechanically, and you could literally hook that thing up to like a throttle joystick.
Yeah. So literally, if you put the magnets, they create almost a vacuum, electrical vacuum, where the positive will go into, and that'll suck it that way.
Yeah, they just steer the ions exactly the same way that ions are steered inside of a picture tube. They're just doing it at a much higher pressure, at atmospheric pressure, but they still get steered with the magnet.
Wow.
Especially when you have a quantity of them.
I suppose you haven't gone into any experiments on lift capacity yet.
Oh, certainly have.
Am I jumping ahead a little bit? I'm just wondering how many I need to float my bus.
Well, there are some things I will talk about and some things I won't.
Me too.
And I will certainly talk about. And what we have here is a little audio matching transformer. And what this does is it can take about 12 volts input, standard car battery, and jump it up to about 90 volts output. That 90 volts output is being pumped to 3 individual piezoelectric transducers. Now these things are super duper cheap on Amazon, eBay, Banggood, whatever. Super cheap. These transducers, apparently, according to the pictures from Alexei Chirikov, the guy with the Grabby flyer, he used just one of these in the top, in a cone, to focus that sound wave down. So in this case, we have 6 magnets on the lower disc, and we have a serrated surface on both lower and upper discs. And what these will do is create a modulation to the ionized field already generated at the surface of the discs. So the discs are pumping out ions at the sharp edge, and they're being rotated around because trapped charges on the surface of each disc are basically grabbing hold of the ions that are being generated as a result of the sharp edges. So give me one moment, I'll show you the Grabby. This silly little thing. Now, I don't have the ultrasound installed. I haven't been working on this because I've been working on a solid-state version of this that I'm not going to show today. And I haven't been authorized to show that. Anyways, so there's a
This
textured
is Jeremiah, our super engineer.
doing what we do, right? Just trying to solve the world's energy crisis and create levitation because we all want our friggin' flying cars, and we were
Yeah,
promised.
man. I was promised a flying car back in the 80s, man. Where is it?
Yeah, where is my flying
Yeah.
car? I want that damn thing already.
And even,
So,
you know,
anyways,
the health
ions
safety
fly
belt.
off the edge, and this thing traps charges on the surface. You can see that the internal surface is different than the external surface. Charges try to get through this material and attract to the center disk, which is grounded through this Tesla coil right here. It's short and stout, and the reason why it's not an extremely tall coil is because we can pump serious current through it due to the better impedance matching and high coupling coefficient of this variable movable primary coil. So we can pump about 100 watts into the center disk here, which is quite a bit more than the original design. So we don't have to screw around waiting for plasma resonance. We can basically just turn it up high enough until we start to hear that hiss and that funny little whining sound that comes out of the edge of this disc when we get ions. But anyways, charges being trapped on this disc means that they're being dragged around and they don't have a total potential that scales out, meaning they don't gauge themselves out. They're individual point charges, and each of them, if there's an ion close to them, will try to drag it along with the direction of the rotation of the discs. That'll create a vortex that comes out the top, spirals around the outside, and comes back and tries to return underneath, eventually neutralizing at the center disk. There are also ions flying directly out of the edge and hitting the center disk. So the higher AC potential we apply to the center disk, the more ions we pull out of this disk, and the more we get to physically move up and down the charged ions. As this plate goes positive and we have positive ions on top, they're going to be pushed upwards. So you basically have this transducer-like motion.
Mm-hmm.
It's an acceleration transducer, if you will. Quote Todd Desiato on that one. He wrote a paper on it. I would highly recommend that people read Acceleration Transducer. It's online by Todd Desiato. I think you can find it axrv.org, maybe. Anyways, if I can find it, I'll throw it in the links or whatever. But that's basically how this works. It creates a vortex that creates toroid on both sides, opposite directions, and the negative side is repelled away from Earth, creates a lifting force because it's repelled against the giant electron well that we're living on. And the positive side is going to physically create positive ions in the atmosphere, which will then try to reach the negative side, displacing the atmospheric volume around the edge and creating a vacuum on the top, which again creates buoyancy, creating a lifting force. So both effects, both top and bottom, positive top, negative bottom, create buoyancy on top and a repulsion from Earth on bottom, the lifting force.
So
and that's effectively the theory, the operational theory of the Graviflyer, if you will. It's a bit simplified the way I described it. I didn't talk about the torsion tensor or exactly what these magnets are doing or how they're assisting in generating that field or the buildup of these vortices and how the aluminum disc can accumulate those charges or how you get virtual charge separation out of the vacuum. These are things I'm not going to necessarily cover today, but these are all other possibilities that could explain why this device has a seemingly significant amount of lift if it were to actually be true compared to just an ion lifter.
Wow.
It's quite heavy, by the way.
Wow. Well, I think, we're definitely going to have to get you back. I mean, I've got so many questions. I mean, apart from the obvious, I mean, that thing looks like, a UFO or a UAP or whatever we want to call it.
Based on the work of Victor Schomburg.
Yeah. Victor Schomburg with water, yeah?
Yeah, and the repulsor discs, he figured out the whole ionic flow and charge separation thing. He figured out that if you had a little bit of an ionized charge, that if you created a mechanical motion to separate out an atmospheric gas, you could literally strip charges out of the air using mechanical pressure from high flow rates of gas. And that's a pretty fantastic thing when you think about it, because it means flying cars with mechanical rotating system.
It's like the technology sounds like what we hear about with what
the Jetsons come true.
He was creating differentials and floating blocks, right?
Right. And if you neutralize your ions on the bottom, which you could easily do with a tiny little radio antenna, hint, hint, Jetsons, high voltage AC on that radio antenna, then you've effectively neutralized any pulling force from leftover ions that happen to reach the bottom of the device or the bottom of the craft.
So this could be used as a lifting device too, where you could like put, like if it was in two pieces, right? You put one on the top or whatever and one somewhere else, and would that lift a block? Yeah, right. Yeah.
I mean, I see no reason why a device like this on a large scale or a properly scaled system couldn't be used to transport cargo and make shipping costs tremendously low, or why industry wouldn't use this to move things along the conveyor belt, or basically I really can't see where it wouldn't apply. I can't really say how industry will use it or even whether or not it's safe. It could produce gamma radiation, which I will also mention it probably does. So there are things to consider with these types of that do need to be thought about, but we have solutions for all of them, including blocking of the gammas. Boron nitride, for example, will block the gammas and absorb them. Not only that, it'll also collect part of that charge splitting phenomena that I said I wouldn't talk about on this particular show.
That's right. We can do that later.
Collect our boron.
Wow, that's everyone's brain out there. I mean, because that shape, these balls, you know, when we look into a lot of alternative history, we see that
with the flat
everywhere.
plane spinning in the middle, the centrifugal force from that in the middle, and then the dielectric going out within the fields from that central perspective.
I mean, we've seen these ball type things on buildings, on boats, on airships, like everywhere. So I'm just wondering, I mean, we just see them as balls, but maybe it's the same kind of tech. You know, if you see it on transport.
Right? Especially in the cathedrals, Campbell, you're so bang on. Like some of the old blueprints for them, well, under the domes, it literally looks like those wrapped coils, and we're calling it like just a maze. But it's like, no, that's a bifilar coil that is creating these scalar harmonic frequency waves.
And if it was pulling down negative ions, then that would literally make people feel good when they went in there.
Yes, it would. Our bodies quite like the preference of negative ions. Positive ions are damaging. Our bodies know what to do with an excess of something in general, and an excess of electrons is no exception. But our bodies have no idea what to do with a lack of something. And so if we strip electrons out of ourselves with positive ions, we're going to end up in quite the situation where we can no longer perform normal biological functions properly. And that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a very profound statement. Our bodies don't know what to do when they don't have something. It's so true, right?
Being pumped with these charged particles in a cathedral, the so-called churches, and then they have the giant spire up going into that atmosphere to collect as much high as they could, and then so it's pumping everybody with these ions, and then they play the organ and bringing that sound organ. Is that the organ of life? What harmonics are they then putting in, pumping in at the same time? Are they making you resonate with that atmospheric flow of charged particles?
Yeah, and with the floors, if the floors under the domes are those pancake coils, then that means the differential is the cathedral, the space inside, isn't it?
Exactly. That spike creates the preferential path. And the ions pour right down it.
Wow, man, that's a lot of dot connectors. All right, look at that wireless energy there, right there, guys.
So I'm gonna hold. Wow!
Look at how it repels that.
Smoke was coming out of my finger because this thing is a little too close to the top terminal here, and I can see that we're pushing. So, actually, well, I can feel the heat actually rising off of this plate here, because what this is doing right now is it's oscillating about 1 million times a second, 1 megahertz, and in doing so, it's physically perturbating the dielectric field around it. And so it's generating a lot of heat because there are imbalanced charges in the air. So I'm just going to hold on to this one wire with my hands here. And then I'll touch the other wire to the terminal.
Wow.
Ooh. Oh. Yeah, that gets plenty hot, plenty quick. So a lot of power coming out of this thing, anyways, to say the least.
So is that the kind of tech that Dodgem cars use?
The kind of what?
Like Dodgem, is that what you call them? I'm in Australia. Like, at fairs, like those little cars that you drive around and they got the big antennas that scrape on the metal
Bumper
wire.
cars.
Bumper cars, yeah.
Bumper cars.
No, that's quite different. That's a direct current, and applying a lot of power, basically running 500-watt scooter motors or brush motors inside those cars.
Boring that down, okay. But it's just direct contact, yeah, okay.
Right. Yeah, this thing will operate at quite a distance. Now, I have a lot of turns on the primary coil here specifically because it's designed to power a capacitive load and create plasma resonance in that gravifier. That's what it was built for. But if I simply replace this primary coil with one that only has 2 turns, then I can get a significantly higher voltage out of this thing. And if I give it a pulse at the maximum output current of these particular MOSFETs, and they're rated for 40 amps, that's why I have to use a much larger transformer here, because the gate capacitance on these MOSFETs is quite a bit higher than what we would ideally use, like a cheap MOSFET, such as the IRF 640. I can get 4-inch sparks out of this top plate, no problem, with this coil setup. But of course, it will be drawing about 100 watts and a lot of heat dissipated. At this range, the way I was just running it,
is that a modified Tesla coil?
Is it what?
A modified Tesla coil, or what exactly sort of system?
Yeah, it's considered a solid-state Tesla coil, meaning there's no spark gap, no moving parts. You simply turn it on and it works. If you want to consider the fan, which is technically not necessary, but we're using it anyways to keep that heatsink cool, that's the only moving part on this entire device. So they just call it a solid-state Tesla coil, which abbreviated SSTC. You can find about, 25,000 videos on YouTube of these things in various forms, but this one is about as simple as they get. I mean, it really doesn't get simpler than this design. And here's that whole board. We're looking at so few components on the board, it's absolutely bonkers. Wow. 2 MOSFETs, 4 diodes. These parts that we can barely see over there, that's just an LED indicator. You don't need that. And these capacitors over here, that's just a snubber. That should already be in the power source, or if you use a battery, you don't even need that. I just have this on here because I might be using super cheap power supplies, and I just wanted it to kind of act like a little battery on board. But again, yeah, we're looking at basically 6 components in total on the board. 1 current limiting transformer, center tapped. I cheapskated instead of using 2 inductors like on this one, and I decided to use 1 inductor on this one just to see if I could get away with it. And it turns out it works just as well. And the only other component is a little transformer here that you just hand wrap. Now this one I tore out of the heart of a CFL lamp, old burned out lamp. And a compact fluorescent lamp already has one of these little inductor transformers inside of it. All you've got to do is remove the 2 halves of the core, which are just generally taped together, and taking a blow dryer or a heat gun allows you to easily remove the 2 halves. You unwind the wire that's already on there, and the secondary coil on this transformer is connected to the MOSFET gates. So each of these MOSFETs has a gate that basically is just a signal that tells it to turn on. And so it switches back and forth between 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2 in a push-pull mode oscillator, where any one of these is off, having current fed through the inductor, or in this case, having current fed through half the inductor. The other one is grounded, so current is just switching back and forth as it flows in this primary coil. It's a very simple circuit.
So it's basically just affecting the fields. Is it that's why it's affecting the amount of charge that it can hold? Is that right? It's
the amount of charge that what can hold? Do you mean the amount of voltage on here? Oh, that's hot! Wow. Expecting that.
Cliff Tower. The what are they called? The ball. Oh God, I'm losing my words.
Oh, like the plasma bulb, the neon tube.
Oh, you mean why is this lighting up? Yeah, it's because there's a high voltage, high frequency field around here.
Yeah,
it follows a whole entire system. Like I didn't show you something very far away, but I mean, if I change this out to a 2-turn, I can light a bulb over 6 feet away with this little coil right here.
And is that affecting the field that's coming out of the main coil differently? Is that why it's changing the charge and the distance?
Right, because the capacitance here is changing the frequency, and it's also changing the loading. So instead of the power that comes out of this thing reflected in the field being able to rush right back in, when I have my hand here, I'm concentrating it, forcing it to actually flow all the way through this coil into the dielectric field between my hand and this capacitive terminal. And then that energy has to flow back out of the dielectric field, which literally flips all of the little dipole moments in the atmospheric molecules between this plate and my hand, that being the dielectric, which is the atmosphere. And that's why we're getting that heat, because we're effectively flipping all of those little molecules around in their electric charge orientation and their electron valence spin orientation in the atmosphere between this plate and my hand, hence generating heat because we're getting air friction due to the fact that they're not still. They're basically moving around at 700 miles an hour all the time. That's what air always does. All the little molecules in front of us, 700 miles an hour at all times. You're breathing in 700 mile an hour air. I mean, it's just the way it is. That's how fast those individual atoms are going. They're just very close together, so we never notice because the average speed is 0.
So, wow. So the is just as a basic question. The more turns in a coil, does that mean the faster the electrons move, and the less?
The more turns in the coil means the lower the ratio. So this coil, for example, has, I'm just going to guess, like 450 turns. I don't remember exactly what it has. I calculated it out to be exactly 1 megahertz under load, which is exactly what it is, 1.00 megahertz under load. So if we've got 450 turns on here, and we've got 45 turns on here, that means we're going to get 10 times the voltage out of this coil that we will out of this coil for whatever voltage is on this coil. So at 12 volts on this coil, we're going to get 10 times that 12 volts, which is 120 volts on this coil. But a funny thing happens in the dielectric field. You get to recycle your power. So this thing will create a capacitive field, like there's a capacitor physically connected from the top of this coil to the bottom of this coil. And it will actually build up energy that rocks back and forth, which increases current flow through the primary and continues to rise voltage as it ramps back and forth, bouncing from the top and bottom of this secondary coil. And in doing so, instead of ramping out at a maximum, in this case, we have 450 turns here, and we have, I know we see a lot more turns here than we actually have, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we got 6 turns on the primary here and 450. You guys can figure out what that ratio is for fun. And 7 turns technically, sorry, yeah, 7 turns on the primary, 450 on the secondary. And so we're not going to have a tremendous amount of voltage rise, but in the capacitive field, we can basically take that factor and we can add a multiplier of 10 to it because of the energy stored in the dielectric fields around this system.
Yeah, I mean, we're told every action has an equal and opposite reaction, aren't we? But with all the energy sources we're shown, none of them do have an equal and opposite reaction, right? They just get sucked up and disappear. So, I mean, that's what you're talking about is like you're using all the energy, all the radiant and different energy and different, effects that are being created is all energy, isn't it? That can be recycled, reused.
Right. And this circuit doesn't waste it either. It does something else. Going through this transformer, the other side of this transformer is connected to the source pin of these MOSFETs, which is the common ground. But the secondary coil on this transformer that powers the gates, well, the gates are clamped with diodes to the power supply. So that means any voltage coming back from the secondary from the dielectric field as it feeds the system that's above and beyond the 12 volts or whatever voltage the power supply is set to, it literally gets pumped back into the power supply on the other half cycle. So this thing continues to cycle back its own energy at a pretty significant loss, but it does actually eat up its own dielectric field and pump it back into the power supply, decreasing the total current load. And that's why moving my hand up and down on this thing changes the amount of current it draws so much, is because it's either going to be completely recycling its power and it's going to stay at a nice low current while generating the same electric field around here, or I'm going to give it a place to go and turn that into something else, a magnetic field between my hand and this unit, or my hand and this unit, or the gravifier disc, center disc, and the 2 top and bottom discs. If I give it a place to go, it's going to draw more current because now you're effectively doing work to polarize atmospheric gases. And so it draws more current because all of its energy. Simple as that.
All right. Yeah, I think I got that up to where the gas is all flipped. How are you going?
Have to rewatch
Good times. Thank you, Jeremiah.
Okay, Esra's going to explain back to us how that all works.
Oh, okay, yeah. So real quick.
And go.
No, but I was immediately was thinking, obviously, how we can manipulate it, just like you were talking about it. It's brings up the whole. Oh, just talking about too, like the amount of influences. I like to talk about this is with the body, and every molecule having its own 0-point field and being influenced by each other. So he's just talking about using his own body for like polarization with something that he's controlled. So just imagine like what we do when we're influencing each other.
Exactly right, and why they've literally tried to keep us apart.
Yes,
Right. And what could be coming out of those towers, the different waves and fields that they're putting on us, right? That could be, it shows huge how much just being within these fields affects the body and the cells and everything. It's crazy.
Well, and the heart is its own energy source. It's not just a pump. It emits its own light. It emits its own sound. And it actually, supposedly, the heart, it emits every kind of frequency you can imagine. So if you're within so much distance of somebody and you get that, well, it's like, the whole concept of the aura field. But yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which makes me wonder why we bury our dead 6 feet underground. Lose connection when we do that? Yeah, with our ancestors, do we lose that connection?
Yeah. Is that why it's done? Yeah.
And why you'd have a big pillar as your gravestone resonating up, I've wondered many times. Especially the ones that are shaped like obelisks, and why you'd be buried in a pyramid.
Wow. Wow. And like all the reanimators and stuff like that we heard about in the 40s and stuff.
There we go. I know everybody likes lightning bolts, so I figured, what the heck?
Yeah.
Do a quick demo here.
Oh yeah.
Like a taser. Is that what they call them?
Much more powerful than a taser. Well, this is what powers that gravity flyer. I guess I could move these a little farther apart and probably still get some decent output.
I want to learn how to just in case these jab people come in. I'll zap them.
Yeah, that's plenty. Anyways, it all runs off 12 volts. That's the whole point.
That's cool, man. You
12
could
volts. That's awesome.
Right? You could make a little hat and have antennas and walk around going zzz and really freak people out.
I'm not going to say I haven't already done that.
Nice.
The Teslathons, a lot of guys wore top hats and had plenty of things strapped to them. I was not outside of that crowd.
yeah, steampunk, man, like all the top hats. All right, well, that was awesome, and we're coming up to, almost 3 hours, so we might have to...
Yeah, about that time.
I tried to jump on with you guys earlier, but I had to eat something, man, and dinner was delicious.
So, much appreciated, brother.
Hey, genius. So do you have a channel, Jeremiah?
I do. I have 2 of them. I have an old one that I don't hardly care about anymore, and it's called Join the Technicians, where you can see a real working electric magic wand levitating small pieces of material. And I've got a bunch of other videos up on there, also how to build your own taser, blah, blah, blah. And I only put 12 or 13 videos up there. I kind of abandoned the channel when I got heavy into the gravity research because it just didn't seem to suit the crowd. And then I've got a new channel now that I haven't started to promote at all, and it's Exotic Propulsion on YouTube. And so it will probably be a little hard to find because I have hardly any subs there. And as I said, I haven't done any keywording, any promotion, anything like that. This is actually, I think, one of the first times I'm really mentioning it on a live stream. But since you ask, yeah, I do occasionally and will be posting more videos to that channel. I'm just not putting the kind of same video editing work into the channel as I used to because they're more impromptu stuff that I'm taking from my cell phone as projects go along. And I mainly just use that channel to help people in our groups out. We have many research groups on WhatsApp. They're free and available for the public to access, and you can get to the main WhatsApp APEC 24/7 group at altpropulsion.com. And there's basically somebody awake 24/7 on that group, and who would love to talk about propulsion, anti-gravity, strange space phenomena, various theories. They'll debate relativity with you. I mean, it's just to kind of catch all, and then from there stems out a multitude of other groups that cover gravity flyer research, inertial propulsion, a theory space, a space just for builders who put together really interesting stuff regarding propulsion and anti-gravity and that kind of stuff. And then there are other STEM groups that actually came out of that. We've got a time travel group and all kinds of other weird stuff that it's a collection of people. I mean, it's just all on WhatsApp, but you get there by first going to altpropulsion.com and just getting the WhatsApp link at the very, very, very bottom of the page. Rather hard to find.
All right. Oh,
Awesome.
So
Yeah,
only
I've
join the
seen
group
your
if you want
wand
your
one.
phone to
It's pretty
continuously
cool.
buzz. Don't join the group if you don't want your phone to continuously buzz, because it will.
yeah, one of those groups.
And only join the group, please, if you're actually interested in alternative propulsion, because it's really not just a general discussion group about anything. We do try to focus it on the engineering and practical application of how we can become the Jetsons, or how we can get to that future that we were promised and denied. So that's the purpose of why Mark and I originally threw together APEC. We were basically kicked out of Estes Park because we were a little too fringe. Alien spacecraft, bad sequence to talk in front of the NASA guys, and unfortunately he knew somebody that was on there, and we got kind of kicked off. Said you guys aren't invited anymore, and we could tell they were a very academic community.
A good one. Sorry to interrupt you, Jeremiah, but a good one you did with Andreas Exertus the other day on why the space as a vacuum is a scam, I think is what it was called, that you did, explaining what they tried to show us.
Isn't a vacuum. Tachyons are faster than light, and something on those lines. Andreas tagged it great.
Anyways, it's a good one that you did with them. You guys get a little bit into Tartaria and stuff too, and a lot of people watch on
I literally did that with 5 minutes warning, man. It was terrible. Don't watch it. Anyways, watch it if you love Andreas' channel. If you just love learning about lost history, the mud flood, or any of those kinds of things. It's not my best interview. I did it without shaving. I looked like absolute garbage.
Oh my God. You didn't even
myself today. But anyways, yeah, I do drop some good meat and potatoes there. I actually dropped more of them on Jeremy's show earlier. I think it was yesterday, a couple days ago, something recently on Alien Scientist channel. I dropped more of those meat and potatoes, talking about how to do some of the things that I'm not talking about tonight, so I don't get myself
some good ones tonight too.
Cool. Wow. All right. Yeah. And anyone who hasn't, go and check out Andreas Xertus. How do we spell it? Xirtus. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Xertus,
I was thinking the same thing earlier. Didn't
something like that. Good channel. All right. And we've put the links to your channel in there as well, and a few other bits. So check out the chat if you're looking for those channels, guys. But basically the name of the channel was Exotic Propulsion, and that should, you'll be able to find all the other links from there. So there we go. And that was awesome. So, we'd love to have both you back, Daniel and Jeremiah, at some point, if you want to come back and blow our brains out our other ear. That would be good.
Oh, we'd love to.
All right. Nice to hear.
Been pretty vocal lately.
As well as Ezra.
Hey, nobody's listening, so it's time to get that stuff out, Dan.
Yep.
The guy's a genius, if you haven't already figured out. I missed the earlier part of the show. I don't know what he's said so far, but really, the only reason that he might ever sound decoherent is because he's in a tremendous amount of pain, and the guy is super tough, and he just pushes through the pain. So that's Dan. But he's got a super high IQ. I won't even say how high it is. Anyways,
we pray for your safety.
Come up with all that stuff, and sorry, Daniel.
I don't really sound like it. I've been so isolated after being disabled for these last 20 years that I don't really have a practice talking with people very much. So I am kind of a quiet one.
That's all right. You're just the strong, silent type, mate.
You're doing awesome, and we love you. And we love you all.
We do. Yes, and I think that's all. Sorry, you go.
Oh, I was just saying life is love.
Life, there you go. All right, nice place to end. Life is love, and love is frequency. So there you go, guys. Put out the right frequency.
Well, I'll quote Dan one more time at the end of the show. I love this one. the love you live is the love you give. Couldn't agree with him more.
Exactly. Exactly right. We live in a reciprocal environment. What we give is what we get back. So, and that's of course what all this free energy is built on. Essentially, is there has to be two forces, right, that interact. So, I hope you enjoyed that one, guys. So we'll give you some time now to scrape your brains off the floor, because no doubt they're everywhere after that little speech. But we'll definitely get Daniel and Jeremiah back and sort of get into that, and because I know there's some pretty big concepts there, and a lot of us aren't, electrical engineering geniuses. But we definitely want to build our own flying spaceships and buses, so we need to get you back. So thanks for joining us, guys. Thank you, Esra, for joining us as well and giving us a little bit of information on sleeping and frequencies.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for
having us.
Yes, you're welcome back anytime, everyone. Of course, BurnEye, Mind's Eye, Third Eye, stuff out, didn't I? BurnEye's Third Eye, Mind's Eye, Science Guy without the bow tie, and the longest name on YouTube. There we go. So thank you everyone in the chat for joining us. We love you all. Remember, you are what you give. So give the right thing, and that's what you will live. And until next time, we bid you all adieu. Bye for now.
Bye.